Welcome to the 100 subscribers stream. Yay!
Hey!
Hey!
Hi, guys.
Hello! Good evening.
I know I've got the scarf and all that on. Thank you very much. I know I've got the scarf and all that on, and yes, Tom does not wear the scarf in this one at all. One of us had to.
Well, that's all right.
Well, why not?
Exactly.
He approves. He's here.
Yep. I love that. I'm
Why not?
standing here.
Why not?
But so the Talons are one of my favourites. Actually, believe it or not, it's one of two of my favourites of Tom's era. And believe it or not, the second one is the only other one that Layla doesn't wear her skimpy outfit. Horror of Fang Rock.
Oh, you should let us guess. You should let us guess. Let us other guess.
Oh, yes. Love Horror Fang Rock.
I love it. Basically, considering it's based on a true story. It was the Lighthouse Keepers. That's basically a true event, and they obviously used that of the lighthouse keepers disappearing from a rock in Scotland, just off the coast of Scotland. So
there's no bias there at all, is
no
it?
bias at all. No. It obviously was nothing to do with the fact that Layla didn't have a skimpy outfit on. So my two favourites just so happened to be the two that she didn't wear her skimpy outfits on. But hi guys, thanks for joining us. Colin P. Darius is already in here.
Hello.
In here. Darius and Retro. Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to mention the DVD later on, but what we'll do, I suppose, we'll just start discussing Talons of Weng-Chiang. We'll try and skip over the parts that made sure it didn't get repeated by the BBC or transmitted in the US and Canada because of the, shall we say, politically incorrect parts. But as they are signs of the time, I just ignore them. It's just something that happened.
Yes, exactly.
Can I just say I had a Chinese flatmate in university, and he actually watched it and he was offended.
Well, it's the same idea. In the States, they used to do it. Mickey Rooney played a Chinaman in one movie, and that was a very caricature one. Then you had the Charlie Chan movies. It was Orson Welles that played them, but basically it was played by a white guy that done it. But the problem is, it's the same as if you look at Chinese movies or Japanese movies of the similar era. They had anybody who was meant to be black. They had one of their actors black up. It's the same as if they were meant to be a Brit or an American. They just decked them out in typical American gear and basically made their eyes look slightly wider. And they always had glasses on because that was typically what they would see. It's the same as you would see occasionally when they were doing a battle scene and it was meant to be against the British. You would have the occasional Chinese actor dressed as an Indian or a Scotsman, believe it or not. It was just the way things were done at the time because the culture didn't have as many actors of different cultures in it, so they made do.
By the way,
go ahead, Sadako.
I just said during the scene in the police station where they've got one of Lee Sen-Chang's henchmen, and Tom Baker's speaking to him in very fluent Chinese, and the other guy is kind of putting it on. Like my flatmate was watching and said, "Look, the doctor, the English guy, he spoke very good Chinese there. That was proper Chinese, but the other, that's not human language kind of thing."
Yeah,
but it's the same again. That's why this program is never repeated. But although it's still one of the better storylines, the story is absolutely amazing.
It is,
but it was seen as like there was. But the thing is, as well, it was also set in a time. It was 1888. It was set where certain slurs were actually put out as nothing. So they just put those things in. They weren't as offensive as they could have been. They just used silly slurs when referring to the Chinese or the coolies or whatever.
If we're going to be completely brutal, if people that are getting a little bit offended about, say, language used in the 1960s, believe it or not, this morning I actually saw, I think it was from one of these science channels and everything, there's like, what if you traveled back 100 years in time? Could you actually understand the English language?
No.
And their conclusion is you would not be able to understand it at all, even though you would be fluent in English today. And it is the same thing. We do adapt and change the language because it is modular. And we do agree that, okay, maybe you shouldn't be so mean to someone that happened to have a certain characteristic or anything. But I think the film industry is going through the same phase, because if you look back in, shall we say, history, it's unfortunately quite recent, but blackfacing, Chinamen pretending to be what they were not, very common, because we need someone that can do it, and we're on the timeline, we've got the budget, but you're the best one we can get.
Yeah.
Do you know what a classic example of that is, though, in terms of the way the language changes? Is in Romeo and Juliet, the most famous quote is, "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" And people today think she's saying, "Where is Romeo?" And no, she's saying, "Why are you Romeo?" You know, because because
if you read this, that's why you need people to, when you're reading old stuff, you don't actually read it, you're reading new translations of the old stuff. What they're doing is putting them, that's why you get people say ye old.
Well, it's the old.
It's the old. It's just people say ye because they think everybody spoke like that, but it's not. That's just the way it was written. Ye instead of thee. It's things like that. So we'll just get those parts out of the way first. We're not going to address the fact that people were actually, there was certain racial slurs put in, there were certain representations and stuff like that. We're all those, and they were signs of the time. Not accepted now, we understand, but we're not going to address that because we're reviewing a good story.
Can I just address two of Colin P. Smith's comments? Because he did ask about was the actor. It was Kevin Stoney who played Lee Chang, wasn't it?
I think so, yes.
And he played Tobias Vaughan in The Invasion. So yeah, he was definitely white. Definitely a white guy. But the other one is
it was John Bennett. It was Lee Chang.
Oh, was it? Oh, I had that wrong. No. Okay.
It was Tom Bennett. John Bennett, sorry.
Oh.
I got a list of their names there.
Oh, that was a bit of an embarrassing boo-boo for me. Anyway,
a lot of you could probably fool me, because I did try to get on. Thank you, Wendy. You told me BritBox. I literally have it on the big screen behind my computer screen. Would you like to sign up to BritBox?
Oh,
I just didn't have the time to get around to it because I wanted to see it before joining. Because I haven't, but it's will be very interesting to hear how you describe the story, and then go and actually watch it.
Whoa, Jim, you've not watched it?
No, I have not.
We are here to educate Jim and the story. So Jim is our audience on
Jim, you need to see it. Definitely, it's one of the best. It's like
It is.
Yeah. Those scenes and moments are obviously of the time. They're unfortunate, but they really shouldn't be allowed to sort of mess up your experience of the story. It's an outstanding story. It's really, really well done.
It's so well written and so well acted. Even silly things that you would not have on TV today, they had. And they were just so well done. You actually brought you into the story. Like, for instance, remember where down at the wharf when they're dragging in a body? You've got the wee old woman. I told you, I told you. And she's looking going, he's dead, look at him. And you're sitting there thinking, they wouldn't put that in the TV now because it would be just a wee bit. that it doesn't add to the story, but it added to the world building they were doing.
The landscape, yeah.
At the docks, and it's just that type of thing. And this is not the best part of London, and it was just that one wee character just actually put
all those little subtleties.
It was the wee subtleties, like for instance when Lee Sen-chen was doing, he had Mr. Sin, and Mr. Sin was talking. You could still see him going as if he was actually doing the ventriloquism. You actually could see him actually look as if he's trying to not make his mouth move, and it's him doing it because you could just see the slight movements in his chin. And it was such a, because you think about it nowadays, you would have them sitting like that, the thing would move, and they would, whoever the actor would be to do it, they would do it. It would look as if he's being a ventriloquist, is doing it spot on, because there wouldn't be any movement with the gullet or the chin moving slightly. And that you watched Lee Sen-chen, and you see him as if he's actually the ventriloquist holding the dummy. It is amazing the detail they had in it.
And that's why even like the little magic tricks that are going on that are in kind of non sequiturs of the story, they're still engaging. They still, you feel kind of, you could watch the entire, you feel like you could watch the magic trick of Lee Sen-chen for,
yes,
minutes on end, and you're just enthralled of the audience watching.
And
I will say, as the most ignorant, non-knowing about this particular one, is the descriptions you are already providing, non sequiturs. Well, if you use a non sequitur, which means it has no real ending, there's no purpose to it. But if you can bake that into a good story, that is a sign of a good storyteller. I'm just telling you, this tiny little snippet, it didn't mean anything, it didn't carry the story on, but it was just something that I wanted to tell as part of it. That, for me, is true movie magic.
Yeah, it sort of just world builds around certain events. It doesn't add to the story. It doesn't take away from the story if it wasn't there, but it just adds that wee bit extra to the experience of watching it. It was just amazing watching the wee side bits that were happening, like you were saying about the magic tricks. The bit where the doctor goes into the death box, and Lee Sen-chen switches it around, and as he's got it turned round, the doctor walks out, and everybody laughs. Right? You could just imagine somebody doing that in the trick. Yes, it made a silly joke. At least to see one of us is yellow, making a joke on the fact that he's Chinese.
I know that was a bit cringe, but it was
cringe. But it was a case you can imagine that happening on stage. If a comedian come magician was doing it, and he would say something like that just to alleviate the fact that the person who's actually got the box has walked off. But it was even the fact when he was taking the swords out, you see him take the swords out that fast, the swords are falling all over the place, and it looks as if he's fumbling. But they just played it, because you can imagine that happening on stage, maybe coming out a wee bit too fast and dropping something. They didn't go, oh, that last sword came out a wee bit crooked, you'll need to do all that again and make sure it flows better. No, that wee trip, it makes it look real.
Authentic.
Exactly. And I think that's where this story holds up, because the wee nuance parts actually just make it feel real. And it's such a great story. The writing on it was just phenomenal. It basically drove the story forward at every step.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it was a Robert Hole script, so
somebody's getting an echo.
Oh yeah.
Is everybody hearing that, or is it just me? Because I need to put my hair.
No, it was an echo there, but I did mute myself just to make sure it's not me producing the echo back.
Okay. I thought it was basically I need to put my headphones on, because if it's normally it's only the person that's getting the echo. So it could be Jim, because Darren. It could be because somebody else is actually picking it up and it's echoing out. That could be why. I don't know how the echoes work in this thing, because everybody tells me mine's echoes, but I can never hear it, and I have to put my headphones on. So
we've both got headphones on.
Yeah, we're both headphones up.
It's echoing off yours, though.
Could be.
It's gone now.
You've got.
It could be.
It's not too bad now, but there was definitely a big echo spike earlier.
Yes, I did hear it.
It could be just the way it was going. It could have just been one of those things. And they maybe turn the sound down a bit. It might actually work on the headphone, or not the headphones, and the mic. I know sometimes I have my mic up a bit loud.
Yeah, we're sorting that out. Let's see if we can get that sorted.
So, will we discuss the the show from the start, or will we just do a general discussion about the movie or the show? Because let's face it, apart from Jim, everybody here's already seen it, and I think everybody in the actual chat already seen it.
I feel bad now. We don't want to spoil it for.
We don't want to spoil
Jim,
it for Jim, but
obviously.
we wanted to. That's the thing.
Well, the thing is, you're not exactly going to spoil it because I've had, in theory, plenty enough time, but it's been, when it comes to these kind of films, my capture of them has been more along the line. It's nothing I go browsing through my streaming service.
You weren't going to use that one because it had a little extra mic on it. Could that be it? Can I see the?
I've disconnected it now.
Oh, you have.
Well, we're getting the technical resolution behind that. But no, for me, these ones have been more, I'm turning on the telly and I'm scrolling through and it's like, oh, this is on, I'll watch it. I don't continue scrolling. It's like, this is interesting enough. But because we're in the more selective, say, society today, where you go to Netflix and it's like, I got 2.5 million films to choose from. It doesn't turn up on my radar.
No. The thing is, like, I'd said this the other day on Malcolm's stream, Evolution of the Geek stream, because I grew up in the 90s when Doctor Who it was off air, but they still sometimes did repeat seasons. And for me, the way they did the repeats, it was kind of an event. Because of each cliffhanger, you were kind of like, you had to kind of see what happened next. You were kind of hooked to see how it would end. And I feel like that made the repeat seasons a real event. But now, because of Netflix and because the show's a lot more
accessible.
Yeah.
Well, kind of, accessible, but also because the way the new series, of course, is the one that everyone watches, and that's all standalones. It doesn't quite have that same cliffhanger anticipation. I don't think it's going to have the same cliffhanger anticipation if they do repeats in the future, if you know what I mean. Like, but back, when I was younger, it was a real event.
Yeah, it's the same as that. That's why I used to love the old Flash Gordon, because they always had a cliffhanger. And most of the time it was a physical cliffhanger. He was either hanging out a door or something, hanging over a cliff or something, hanging out a window or something. But
I will say, for me, it wasn't exactly cliffhangers, but for me, it was a joy to come home every Thursday after school, flick on the afternoon TV because it was meant to be for the younger people. But I don't think Red Dwarf is for younger people, but it still was presented where I grew up as for younger people. And it was so amazing to see the next story, the next event, the next thing that was going on. Even though they didn't leave between episodes as cliffhangers, it was still what's happening next. Because that's how I see the Red Dwarf story told, or at least the TV show. There isn't cliffhanger between episodes. It's like you want to see what silly stuff is happening next.
Yes. Well, let's talk about silly stuff.
Wendell, your audio levels are quite high. I can actually hear each ping in the background.
Okay, how about now?
Let
me see.
Is
that a bit better?
A bit better, yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
Good.
I see. With mine, usually can hear my dogs just go running away down the laminate. That's basically why I put this fluffy thing on to try and actually stop that, but it doesn't help it a lot. But the two of them are lined up, so I should be okay. But let's talk about silly things. One of the things that this story has been criticised for was the giant rat.
I never had a problem with the rat.
I didn't have a problem.
Being the ignorant one here, are we talking about ROUSSESS?
No.
Rodents of unusual size?
Yes. I know where that's from.
The thing is, people were actually annoyed seeing it looked cheap. Really,
it was almost...
Doctor Who, remember Syl in his wee outfit, or you remember the Vorta? Remember the Vorta or the slug creatures, which were guys wrapped in bubble wrap, crawling down the hall and stuff like that. So it never bothered me. It looked okay. It basically, you could see it was a big stuffed animal type thing. But
when I first saw this story, the rat didn't bother me.
It didn't bother me either, I must admit, the very time I saw it. And even
it might have been better if they just sort of left it to your imagination and just had a shadow or something.
I think you're the one that's causing the echo in Darren's now, because your volume is quite high and I can see Darren's is rattling.
I think it's my microphone, I think. So
is that what it is? It's picking up.
That. Yeah.
See, you're not too echoey there. It's a weird one.
I have to say, when for a brief moment, when Dolly, you were mute and Darren wasn't, I heard you both fine. So it was like
Okay, so if I was to...
No, I can't hear you now at all.
That's because Darren's actually switched off as well.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's just because
we'll get there in the end
as well. If we were saying as if Darren's is switched on and yours is switched off to see how it sounds. It's weird, but that's what it is. If the two of you are speaking in, I don't know.
Don't worry.
I'll ask my dogs. They're my IT support. Did you think it worked? Yeah.
It sounds like you have the most exclusive IT support on the planet there, PJ.
See, I'm glad I got two male dogs, but otherwise they would be a pair of bitches.
Oh, that's low. That's very low.
Sorry, what is a female dog called? If anybody's going to be pedantic about it.
I don't care about semantics. I just know what the current okay language to speak is.
Aye, but for when you're describing dogs, you're allowed to use what they're called. Believe it or not. Aye, Wend and Darren are both mute. Yep.
Yeah.
So, anywho, the giant rat never bothered me. I know people say, oh, it just looks so cheap. Sorry, if you watch classic Doctor Who, that the monsters looking cheap was never an unusual occurrence. You look at the Macra Terror. You look at the original revelation of the Dalek, a plunger coming in. It was never all about how it looked and stuff like that. It was how they used it. And they used the rat to not too bad effect. It's almost like when they were talking about the money spider, when Tom was holding it like that. You could see it was mechanical. Did it bother us? You know what I mean? He's holding the spider like that and his legs are going. You know what I mean? And you're sitting there thinking, and people are complaining about the rat. That is definitely just a wee disc with the legs going as if it's a real spider he's holding. It's things like that just didn't bother me at all. It was really weird that people focused on spiders. Yeah,
it's all about the story. So, little things like that are relevant.
See, that's exactly. It was the stories were superb. It's the same as the William Hartnell ones. They would occasionally fluff a line, but they would just correct themselves and continue on because they were stage actors, so they get used to doing that. But the fact that they didn't cut it, it just made when they were talking to each other feel more real. Because they would, you know what it's like when you're talking to somebody, you might fluff what you were going to say and then you correct yourself and continue on. Mm-hmm. We don't go, stop, we're just going to recut that bit, right, give me the line again, then we'll cut it all back. You get a feeling of it's a natural cadence they're talking. So if they fluff a wee bit of a line here or there, it's not an issue. It's the same as when things like the giant rat, we know it's no real, so does it need to look real for us to believe it? No. It's the same as when they describe something. You don't need to see it to believe. Jaws, you look at Jaws, how terrifying that was right up until they showed you the shark.
Yeah.
But the Jaws bit was so believable to a lot of people that people actually stopped going to beaches and swimming in the ocean.
Yeah, but it wasn't necessarily the shark that did that. It was the anticipation of the shark right up until the point they saw it. It was
the unknown. It was not knowing exactly what was underneath you in the water.
Yeah. So people were more terrified of Jaws, and it wasn't because of the shark. It's because the music about, oh, there's a shark nearby. How many times have you actually been in somewhere they've been doing music, and you know somebody with a cello's been practicing that, so they go, and you get people go, they do that. They're sitting in a theatre, but you see them sort of go like that, as if to say, oh, that got me, because it's that it was.
Well, but I used it in work, because where my workstation is, it was far enough for where you entered into the rest of the room, so I could see the boss coming in and going. It's like, okay, I need something, and I just go under my breath to my team leader and just going, dum, dum. But it's double the fun, because my boss claims he never watched any films, but he understands the Jaws reference like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I only did that with one guy. A guy he worked with, he basically used to come in, he was dressed like Rupert, check trousers, red cardigan on. And every time he walked past, I just downloaded the music and I just pressed play. And he basically, after that, he stopped wearing his check trousers. He thought he looked cool in them, and right up until we started playing that every time he walked in the building. We were very cruel. It was his own fault. It's not as if he was actually a young thing. He was actually older than us when we were actually in the IT support game. So it's his own fault. He wasn't a young guy thinking he looked cool with a bow tie and the sleeveless jumper and stuff like that. He was one of these ones that had the cardigan and the Rupert the Bear trousers. So music coming in, Rupert the Bear. It basically just did not. He basically stopped wearing all that gear. So we're cool. Really bad, terrible. But I still don't think the rat was a big issue. If anybody was going to say the rat was an issue, I would have said, well, the spider was an issue as well, but nobody mentions the spider. But you could see that with the way he was holding it, it wasn't a spider. It was meant to just represent a spider with the legs.
Yeah, but it was just, you were just in the flow of that scene, so you didn't really need for it to be real or particularly realistic looking. It was enough. It was just a momentary scene.
It was. They could talk about the animals being larger, and they used them to represent how big they could get. So they didn't need to constantly show the rats, so they could just have the squealing and stuff like that to represent it. Then the couple of times it was on screen didn't look great, but it didn't take me out of the story. It just was there to cement the fact is these things were roaming the gutters or the sewer.
It's the idea that counts.
It is. It was the idea. Because even the fact is, at the end of the story, they tell you how they get rid of them. That's why nobody ever found giant rats. And Neela says giant ants. I'm thinking of them again. Favourite story. But they never found any giant rats in the sewer because the doctor cleared them all out because he used poison on them. But they basically, that even at that, you imagine a Doctor Who story nowadays, they wouldn't have told you how to get rid of them. They would have just ended the story and just let you assume either they're still there or else they died off or whatever. In this, they actually explain how to get rid of them so they're no longer a danger to anybody getting into the sewers.
Well, I'll speculate that the Victorian branch of Torchwood came in and cleaned up after.
No, they actually basically stated it.
Right, I know, just musing.
But no, they did actually say, the doctors actually see him messing with things. He says that'll clear it out in a couple of days. Then the next time the sluice gates are opened, they'll just flush into the Thames. So basically, he's effectively saying he's putting something into the water in the sewers that'll kill them all. So even that, they clear up that, so they don't just leave wee bits lying open here and there. And the only part they really left open was Django and Lightfoot, because they were going to actually, they liked the two of them together. They were going to give them a spin-off series.
I would have loved to see that.
They ended up just doing it in Audible.
I know.
So they did from 2010 to 2000. I think it was 2010.
I've only heard one of them. It's called the Mahogany Murders, and there's this bit because basically it's both of them kind of telling their side of the story of what happened, and you got Jago kind of regaling the story about and this beast, he was following me, and then Lightfoot interrupts and goes, "What time was this?" It's like, look, I was getting to a cliffhanger. It's like, well, at that time this happened to me, and Jago's like, okay, that was the better cliffhanger. And then the cliffhanger.
Yeah. But it's the same again. It was the same two actors who played it. So you had Christopher Benjamin and Trevor Baxter. So they reprised their roles for the Audible. So they did. And I'm sure, was it 2010 to 2018 or was it 2000 to 2008? I can't remember off the top of my head, but accordingly, there was the Audibles out there. Roughly 8 seasons worth of Django and Lightfoot.
I think there's a Companion Chronicles that was just supposed to be one-off, and that was so successful they did a whole. They basically gave them their own spin-off.
Yeah, because initially they were going to actually get a TV spin-off from Doctor Who, Django and Lightfoot, but it never came to anything. So it was a wee bit unfortunate.
All we got was Kanan and Company.
Yes, or Demons Rising, or Downfall, or Downtime, or what was this, Shakedown as well? That's the one I've got in video over there. Still no managed to see. Shakedown, that's the Centauran one. I've got
that one's actually a lot more dated than Talons.
I can imagine. I can really imagine. Right, did anybody notice the big elephant in the room with the story? Who was meant to be in it?
I know, but I'll see if okay. I know. He was meant to be the master, wasn't he?
That's just based on the story. Yes, there was too many references to the time machine or the time. They kept calling it a time cabinet, but if you replace time cabinet with TARDIS, it would go on. There would be times when he would say to Chang, "Who is this guy?" And then this one you described to me, the other times he would refer to him as if he knew him. "You've brought the doctor to me," and there would be things like that. It's almost like they changed the script, but they forget sometimes not to change it. Like the bit with Leela, he's got her, "You will be the first one for my new regeneration." Whereas up until that point, he never mentioned regeneration. It was just actually giving him some life until he can get sorted. So there's certain lines in it. It's almost like they forgot to change that line, but they changed it all the other times, or they forgot to change that, but they've done it all the other times. So they would change things, but later on they would refer to something that you would think, that's something the master would say, rather than...
I believe... See, the thing is, the Doctor did mention, interestingly enough, he mentioned that when this whole World War V happened, which drove Magnus Greel to go, to retreat back into history. The Doctor said he actually helped fight in that war, which is interesting.
Yes.
So maybe that's probably one way that maybe Magnus Greel knew him.
Yes, but it's just the way. But up until the point where he told him he knew all about him, then that's when he says, "You must have been from our time." But I think that was the part that was added in, so it wasn't the master.
Yeah.
It just seemed, it was right from the beginning, I thought, I can't remember a master being in this, because they were talking about the time cabinet and stuff like that. and it just looked like the type of thing. It basically, after the Deadly Assassin, was another mutated master.
Yeah.
And you could just see the master actually doing that. Did you see that from Colin P? Big Finish just released another box set, although that's a narrated story rather than a play since the death of Trevor Baxter.
Oh,
so
I love Trevor Baxter. He was so lovely in this.
So, yeah, they've done a Django and Lightfoot with the two of them, and then they've obviously done a new box set, and it's just that I would assume it's John Bennett, and sorry, not John Bennett, Christopher Benjamin, in the rather than since Trevor Baxter passed away. But yeah, I must admit, I think I'll need to get some of their Big Finish. I didn't realise they did the Big Finish on those ones, so I might actually try and get a hold of a few. I might actually just to see what's available, because I have got a few Big Finish, but I'm not as keen on the new stuff. So,
no, but just to get back to what you said about the I think. Oh dear, I think I'm echoing now. I think it was Robert Holmes wanted to use the Master, and Hinchcliffe said no. We want to we don't want to rely on past enemies the same way he kind of didn't want the Daleks.
Yeah, probably didn't want to overuse them. I think that's probably. I
think in a way the change is quite interesting, because it means that Holmes writes this whole other story about the future wars and the history of Magnus Greel that I think is in itself very creative, very interesting. It's very kind of,
because they wanted to keep the time. They had to keep the time thing, and yes, I think they had to actually do it, and the story behind it, actually, yes, the Sixth World War, and you're sitting there thinking, obviously they're just 30 years after the Second World War, so let's actually throw a good few ahead, and then obviously they talk about that. But how many times have they said the 51st century? When have they actually travelled into space? Was it sort of the 42nd century and stuff like that? So it seems like a world war doesn't really seem much when you've got a galactic spanning race.
Well, I mean, the Doctor did say in Frontier in Space that there was declining years of the colonization, there were pioneering days, and so it seems like there'd been the pioneering days, then there'd be the declining days, and maybe World War VI was when everyone just kind of came back to Earth or became isolated from the other colonies or something.
Yeah, I know. It seems that although the story was really good, I think they didn't need to throw it so far forward. That's all I was meaning, that they didn't need to mention the Sixth World War. They could have just mentioned the war or something it just more generic, because they could have been on a different. It could have been on Earth. It happened. It was just the Star Trek, the eugenic wars. It didn't need to say World War. It could have just been a eugenic wars. It could have been about, but from two blocks, which could have actually encompassed the whole world, but not necessarily class it as a world war. That's all I was saying. It's just that you're talking about this was 1977, so it's not as if they had to actually use the World War to represent how far ahead in time it was. They could have just named the war, and it would have actually worked just as well, because it could have still put it in Earth. It could have still involved most of the nations in Earth or whatever. But just because they used that and then they used the year, so they could have still used the year, but still called it another type of war. I was just a wee picky with the Sixth World War. That's all. Doesn't make a lot of difference, but it was a wee thing. I thought it would have been nicer if that was just slightly changed. But I better not say too much, because BBC might actually take me up on it. They've knows if they're running out of ideas. Well, that's right.
The other thing kind of struck out at me about it was the fact, because we did kind of Cold War history, and like it was understood in that if it actually did break out into World War III, then we have enough nukes to destroy the entire planet, and that's what would happen. It would be mutually assured destruction. So it was like, well, how would we survive that and then have wars 4, 5, and 6? But I guess there's ways that it can happen that, you know, without the actual threat of proper conflict, we'd have kind of proxy wars that would maybe escalate into bigger wars.
Yeah. Well, that's why you had Vietnam and Korea and stuff like that. They were proxy wars. The two big countries that actually wanted to be basically backing the each opposite side because it was to do with ideology of Russia and
Afghanistan was another one. Like in the 80s, Afghanistan with the
yes, because the Americans backed Mujahideen, which became the Taliban, and then you can imagine the Russians are now actually backing the Taliban because it's all to do with still proxy wars because they don't want to fight each other outright because that's when somebody will press the button, whereas they do it in the background.
Yeah,
it's still crazy. But
apparently, apparently you can actually, in a way, for some reason, if you can do that and kind of get away with it, because I think even apparently Assad did the same thing. He actually fed fighters into Iraq, and we didn't go to war with him over it. We just there were negotiations, and he was basically agreed to stop doing it, and that prevented that going to war. But still killed a lot of people.
Yeah, I know it's crazy when you think about that, isn't it? How bad it can get and how history sort of pushes over it. It's not a major thing.
Wendology just posted something in the private chat. One of the most expensively mounted Doctor Who stories of the 70s was Talons. It saw Tom Baker wearing a Sherlock Holmes influenced version of his costume, specifically created for the serial by John Bloomfield, who is the award-winning costume designer for the Six Wives of Henry VIII, sourced from TomBakerOfficial.com.
Wendology just said that in this private.
Yeah.
I
dropped it in. Yes, thanks, Attica. That was great. That's why I dropped it in there because I'm.
See, I didn't know that. I must admit.
One of the things I loved about this episode was it was just so rich. The costumes, the backgrounds, the dialogue. It was just so immersive, and that's what I think makes it one of the best, most loved stories. Even though it might have a few issues here and there, it's just you can see they invested quite a bit in this episode.
From what I'm told, Phil Hinchcliffe knew he was on the way out, and so normally he'd kind of be quite wary of what he was spending on anything, and this time he just said, "You know what? Spend everything. I'm on my way out." The
BBC worry about it.
Yeah,
yeah, but it's the same idea as well. Do you know this one? It reminded me a bit of a John Pertwee, just because John would have had the big cape and such whereas the Sherlock Holmes with the what was it called? Inverness, not the deerstalker, not a hat. The actual coat, was it called an Inverness? John Pertwee used to wear one, and it was his grandfather's. And that's what he went for the audition in. It's like the big tweed, almost like a cape, but it's the jacket as well. Can't remember what it was called, but it's just that's what it reminded me of a John Pertwee type outfit. And I suppose
that's a good point. Yeah, it's definitely something John would have rocked as well, for sure.
Unrelated to this story, but I love the bit in The Deadly Assassin at the beginning where he has to mock up, he's trying to escape from the guards. So the Gallifreyan guards are breaking into the TARDIS, and so he sets up this dummy version of himself. He just has this hat and this cloak on a chair, and he has this kind of bong that's smoking, and so the guards come in and go, "Don't move! I said don't move."
Yeah, I remember that. I said, "Don't move." I like the way he enunciates every line.
And did you see the bit where talking about the bong when Lightfoot lights up his pipe and Leela is giving it why is he lighting fire to his mouth? Have you never seen a pipe? Oh, no tobacco where she comes from. Very healthy and very boring. So very healthy and yes, very boring. Well, I was standing having a cigarette watching.
Colin P. Smith has put something interesting. The Fifth Doctor story.
The Butcher of Brisbane features the young Magnus Creel, according to the blurb. Oh,
So
Is that a big finish?
Goes back
it
then
would be,
to
yeah.
the original Magnus character then.
It
That
has
would
to be, yeah.
suggest.
It must be. Yeah.
It has to be because I don't recognise the name from any of the stories.
It's
I don't think I've got that one in Big Finish. Picture of Brisbane. I'll need to check into that one. Actually,
it's an audio. Yeah, it's in fact, I've just seen the cover. Yeah, if you look at the cover, it's actually got Mr. Sin on there and the time cabinet.
So I don't think I've got that one. So let's have a look. I'm in Audible. So I've got it. Well, I have. I've got a Big Finish one, Butcher or something. The Butcher of Brisbane. Yep.
Yeah, that's one.
But I don't have the image with it. The image is actually, mine takes an absolute age to load up, but I'll need to actually add that in. Number 17, 5th Doctor 17 story. I've got it tagged as.
I put in the put my image in the private chat.
Yep, that's the one. And talking about Mr. Sin, Deep Roy. He was the Oompa Loompa from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Was that Deep Roy? No, it was was it? It wasn't. He was one. He worked with Johnny Depp, so that's what I was thinking. I think he was, wasn't he?
I just read Colin B. Smith just laid his comment.
I missed that. Let's see. Hey, I like Tegan. Tegan is one of my favourites. I'm saying nothing about Tegan. Never will.
Explain how the war started.
But yeah, I quite understand that now. I think that is actually quite spot on. Mind you, if Patrick was there, it would have probably ended with a fizzle. So could have been lucky, could have been bad. But yeah. But Deep Roy, he was the one. It was Deep. It played in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'm getting an echo.
It would probably have been Willy. Well, if you mean the 70s version, that's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
No, it was the one Charlie the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp.
Oh, that one. Oh, that.
Because he says that Johnny Depp says that the Talons is one of his favourite stories.
Oh. Cool.
Because according to an interview when they were talking about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and they were talking about he was talking about Johnny Depp, and he says Johnny Depp kept saying the Talons was one of his favourite stories when he was talking to Deep, because he was in it. So I can only assume it was. Let's see, IMDb's
found him on IMDb. Yeah,
yeah,
he's associated with that version.
Yeah, so I think he's the Deep is the one that plays all the Oompa Loompas, isn't he?
Deep Roy.
Let's see what his.
Because remember in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, instead of they had all the guys dressed up as Oompa Loompas, they had only the one, and it was just constant. He played every single one of them.
Yeah,
that was Deep. Which I remember the interview. He said he used to spend hours because people thought that they just had him doing the one dance, and then they would just multiply it throughout, just to have them all doing it, and with just a slight difference. So maybe a half a second in between. And he says, yes, they did that sometimes, but what he would do is he would do the same dance each time, and they would have multiple recording of the same dance, so there was slight differences to it, and they would duplicate that, so they weren't all exactly the same. So he says he spent hours doing each.
Oh, wow.
I think that's my wife just coming home.
That means business.
Aye.
Whatever that was, that sounded serious.
Yeah.
I was just reading Deep Roy's IMDb, and under Doctor Who, not only did he play Mr. Sin, but he was also in the episode The Trial of a Time Lord, Part 7. He played a Posican delegate, uncredited.
That's a new one.
That's something I didn't realize.
I think I know which character you mean now, because I do remember there was a particular business meeting with this kind of pink-headed creature in cloaks, but it was like really dwarfish. Came in and apparently that was the big event, because there was the doctor giving Syl advice he shouldn't have gotten on how to make a profit in this field. That like the Tamlins were like, you're not supposed to interfere in local events. You're making a big change to galactic history by that, and that's why they were kind of gonna. That's why it was on trial, basically.
Well, this is fascinating as well. Apparently, he was in The Empire Strikes Back as Yoda, uncredited.
Oh yeah, I knew he did bits and pieces. It was meant to be
exactly when he was moving.
Exactly. Yeah. So instead of using CGI all the time, they would have. I think a lot of the parts of it is when he was meant to be walking with. I'm trying to remember what version it was, what one it was. The Empire Strikes Back. I think it was when he was meant to be walking beside either R2 or something like that, and it was just, or it's so it was so they didn't need to actually have a stage, so the puppeteer would actually go underneath. They just had. I didn't realise it was deep, but I remember they did have someone else. I thought it would have actually been whoever. Oh God, what was his name? Roy, the one that played R2D2.
Kenny.
Kenny.
Yeah, Kenny Baker.
Kenny Baker. I thought it was him. He just did that when they were doing it with the Luke Skywalker. I didn't realise they'd got somebody else in. But then again, Kenny would have actually gone, nope, I'm stuck in that tin. I ain't doing another one. Yeah. Because occasionally they would actually leave him and they would leave. Oh God, C-3PO. I'm terrible with names.
Anthony Daniels.
They would leave the two of them in their outfits, and that's my phone. My Laurel and Hardy.
That's the Laurel and Hardy, yeah.
Who says I'm not a geek? I think me. Because I basically walk in, you see some people, their phone goes, and they go, "Oh, sorry about that." And I said, "You've not heard mine yet." Yeah.
Captain is a Deck of the Replicants in the chat.
Yeah. Hi, Cap.
Hey, Captain.
Hi, Captain.
Yes, Kenny Baker. But and because Kenny was there was one interview he was saying that there was times when everybody went for their break, they would forget to take the helmet off for C-3PO, and they would forget to take the lid off R2, and they would leave the two of them while they all went for their break. He says because they never thought about it, because the two of them actually played their parts so well as mechanical that they completely forgot there was actually people in there. They would go away and go and have their coffees and stuff. Because that was in one of the documentaries about Star Wars, and I thought, Jesus, considering some of the stuff they did was in the desert, it must have been either really hot or really cold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
See, there you go. That's another good ringtone. Dambusters.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's not. That's the. I'm trying to remember. That's the Spitfire one. Because I know, and in the thing, man, it's almost like the drums for the Dambusters. But it's just, I'll need to actually watch it again. See, all these movies I want to watch, I'm just doing too much homework.
No.
See, this is the time when I actually don't mind homework, when you've got that to watch or you've got Dambusters to watch. I'm going to be doing a book next week, hopefully. It's either a book or it's going to be Judge Dredd next week. And I'll know what I'm going to be doing for then. So it's either going to be a comic book with Sentinel Comics, or it'll be Judge Dredd, and I'm going to speak to the rabbi and stuff. I need to find when he's free, so I need to actually work it around him. Because he's a busy man, is the rabbi.
I remember saying, I remember saying to Rabbi on one of his chats, like he was on one of the streams he was doing, like he was saying, "I'm a bit of a God botherer." I said, "Rabbi, stop bothering God. He's a busy man."
So that was the Dam Busters then. Sorry, yeah, there you go. I remember that. It's just when I started singing it, it's sort of I'm thinking, was that the one from the Battle of Britain? It was actually the Dam Busters one. But it's because I've watched so many war movies. I like my war movies as well. Second World War, prefer over the First World War, although I do like Napoleonic over both of those. I like a good American war movie as well, Second World War, Guns of Navarone and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like A Bridge Too Far.
Aye, A Bridge Too Far.
That's a brilliant one.
I could tell you a good one about A Bridge Too Far. One of the guys I used to actually stay next to, his father was actually in that battle. See in the movie the bit where they're overlooking the bridges and the Jeep behind them blows up, goes straight up and turns around and lands. Where they get hit by a missile, basically, I got hit by a missile from one of the German batteries. His dad was the driver, and he says that's exactly what happened. The three of them were standing there, the Jeep behind them just went boom up, turned around, and came flat and down. He said his dad was the driver at that point.
Oh my goodness!
That's what he's saying. He says he just actually the two officers had stepped away, and he had actually gone up beside him because normally he's expected to sit in the Jeep. The Jeep got blown up. It just went straight up in the air and came back down. He says it was only for the simple fact is he'd forgotten, just got out and walked over to see what they were looking at. He survived it. But he says that was true. People think wee bits like that aren't true because it was just to add a wee bit of dramatics, and they said, nope, that's exactly what happened. The three of them were standing there and the Jeep just blew up. Not another missile landed anywhere in the fields, just at the Jeep. So there you go, one of my friends. Oh, now there's a TV show and a half, Generation Kill. Absolutely fantastic. If you've not seen that, that's about the first Afghan war. Absolutely amazing. That is one of the modern war movies that I found fantastic. Well, it's a TV show, 6 episodes, I think it was, but it is fantastic. So, Avatar might have a hint of what his favourite one is. Bowman. See, I used to have a load of those bowmen for my Bretonian army for Warhammer a long time ago, in a beard far away. Terrible that was. But anywho, never mind that. We'll go back to this. Just before we go any further, I am going to give this DVD away. 2 DVD box set, some nice extras in it. All you need to do is be subscribed and hashtag Talons in the comment. And at the end, in 10 days' time, so the 10th of September, I'm going to collate them all and draw them all. Any video I put out live, whatever, put Talons in, and I'll mention it right up until the 10th. I'll draw, and then I'll get in contact, and I'll post it out. Talons of Weng-Chiang.
Yay!
I love it that much. I had 2. One was given as a gift, and I substituted that was my copy. I got a gift, so the gift went in instead, and this came out. Because I like to keep my gifts, even though they're the exact same quality copy, or sometimes even a lesser quality copy. So, like, for instance, if I've got the special edition of something and I get a gift which is not the special edition, I keep both. But if the two of them are the exact same, the one that wasn't gifted to me.
I must say, it looks like you kept yours in better condition than mine. Mine's still. I got mine in 2004 for that Christmas, and but now it's like the plastic binding is bent. The plastic film over the cover is bent, and it just looks a bit.
No, I
you better get the thing to close as well.
Yeah, I basically keep mine. As you can see, my DVDs up there. You can just sort of see them. They're all nicely organised, and I just try and keep them that way. What were you doing away over there? Came down here. There you go. There I'm there. But basically, I like keeping mine organised. So all my Doctor Who DVDs are all organised and they're all slotted in. So, and I don't crunch them up and stuff like that.
Can I just say, there's also on that DVD, there's a documentary from 1977 on the
Doctor
making of the show.
Yeah. There's one behind the scenes. There's a Who's Doctor Who documentary as well.
That is very good.
Yeah.
It's interesting to get a kind of 1970s perspective on the show when it was kind of, it was kind of before it became back, or before it kind of fell from grace,
Yeah. Because this was 77. This was made. Documentary, I think, was made a few years after that.
Yeah. But there's like a lot on it about the making of this story, particularly. Like you see,
there is a few extras on this DVD. There's first DVD's got there's a commentary as well as the episodes. There's a commentary, and I think there's a video gallery or a picture gallery. On the second disc, it's got the behind the scenes, it's got the documentary, and there's a couple other wee bits.
I was just saying, on the documentary itself, you actually see them actually building the tunnels, and you see like at first the wood, and then they put the panels in. You see the guy getting into costume as the rat, and he's kind of doing the rat impersonation as he's putting the gloves on. I like, he's kind of doing,
because I know they're doing it. They've got a behind the scenes on that DVD as well. Yeah. So they have. So I thought they'd split it up for that. But the Who's Doctor Who, that's basically the name of the documentary on it. So it's good as well. I watched half of that, but had to actually stop. So I watched this, and that was the copy I watched just to make sure it was all working. So super duper.
There's a lovely comment, PJ, that's I can't see it on the actual live comments, but it's come up in the comment section.
Is that MC?
MC.
Hi, MC. Thanks for joining us. Quick jumping in to wish you congratulations. Thank you very much. Although it's now at 105. At least unlike the captain, it didn't drop one. And you just keep below and up.
And up. Doing well.
I was expecting to do five 100 sub streams like this captain had to do 5 200 sub streams. Can't get the teeth in there. They kept sliding out. But yeah, thank you very much, MC. And that's it. But I must admit, I'm happy with this. This is one of the best. It's one of the ones where I could listen to it in Audible as well. Because a lot of the stuff, it's such a good story, you didn't need a lot of the visuals. There was a couple of... See, the rat visual didn't bother me. Do you know the one that did sort of bother me? Was the skull ghosty one. It was meant to be the hologram. Only because they mentioned it and then it sort of went nowhere. And the Jago fainted when he saw it, and then it was sort of never mentioned again. Even though he knew what it was sort of never mentioned again. It just seemed to go nowhere with the hologram. We knew these were all different things to protect that area, but the hologram part just seemed to...
Well, to be fair, I mean, wasn't this at a point where the just before Lee Sen-Chang moved base from the theatre anyway, or rather, Magnus Greel moved base from the theatre to the
Tongs
restaurant.
Yeah. That was only because the doctor said it was his kitchen, because he was taking the mickey of a Chinese restaurant. But it basically, they did not say it was the Tongs base. He just made it as this where you cook, implying that this is a Chinese restaurant. That was meant to be a bit of a joke.
Right.
So it was at Weng-Chiang's expense, shall we say. It was implying it was a Chinese restaurant they were in.
Oh dear. Yes.
Not very nice, but at least it wasn't an overtly one. It was just sort of this where you make the food. This is your kitchen. That's what it was. It was implying. because it was the headquarters of the Tong. But then again, it could have been under a restaurant for all we know, because you didn't find out what was above it. But I think that was what the implication was in that part. So
Gotcha.
There was wee bits I can't say there was anything I didn't like. I think they could have done a bit better.
Oh, I don't know if they could have improved this.
There was just wee bits, like for instance, see the food part. Love that where Layla's picking up the chicken and he's which was fine. But when he said about a fork and a knife, she picks up the knife and then just sticks it in. I'm sitting there thinking, nah, it wouldn't work because she's used to a knife, so the way she was holding the knife and sort of digging it in, I would have expected to do more like the series modern movies where, right, the woman has to be tough, so she's got an apple and she's peeling it and eating it from the blade. See if Layla had actually started doing that with a meat, I would have been more impressed. But it's just the way she was sort of digging the knife in and says, this is a good knife. It just didn't look right because she's obviously meant to be someone who's proficient with a knife. And it just looked as if she didn't know how to use it at that point.
I suppose I didn't have any particular issues with that part of the scene, but I kind of see where you're coming from. But what I noticed about that scene, which I thought was fun, was that they were doing a bit of a Pygmalion sort of thing there, where she was sort of the urchin and he was the sort of upper class gentleman that was sort of teaching her.
Yeah.
The
Rex Harrison,
manners and things like that.
The Rex Harrison.
The Rex Harrison. He was the Rex Harrison
professor
of that scene. Yeah,
I can't remember, but the one part that annoyed me was that was the part that annoyed me.
It was a bit much.
A glass, and there was a glass next to her, so I could have seen her getting the cup and going like that into it.
I suppose, yeah. It might have been just a little bit too much on top of the whole.
I think that's all it was. It was just a wee bit over the top. The rest of it was great because, yes, why would she expect to have to put it on the plates and stuff like that? So just picking it up and eating it. It's one thing, that it was when they handed her the knife and she's digging it in. I would have preferred that if she actually just got the knife and just peeled a bit of meat and just ate it off the knife, like you would see as a trope nowadays. I think it would have actually worked so well for her.
I did like when she says it's a good knife. She sort of tests the blade with her thumb. I did like that bit. That was a good line.
I just think Leela was such a great character. She was just like, and the way Louise played it was like she was tough, and like there were times in the story times in most of her stories where actually for a while she becomes the protagonist of the piece. It's like the story follows her, and she's all instinct, and she kind of. Like, I mean, the best bit for me with Leela in this is when she rescues that urchin woman. Like she sees Lee Sen-Chang kind of hypnotize that woman, and she's the one who rescues her. And like under the awareness, like that, she was doing the moral thing in the way the doctor kind of taught her, but she was also doing the instinctive thing. And I thought that was
at that point. But do you know the one part that ruined it for me? She didn't automatically jump into action when the girl was getting put in the machine. It was after the fact which allowed the girl to be killed. It was just, I could have imagined her if she's put in the scene and then she would have attacked him before he hit the lever. But she waited till he hit the lever, then she jumped him.
Was she? Okay.
I mean, because she wasn't hypnotized or anything like that. She was just playing possum until she could do that. But
I think the death scene for the girl was necessary for the story, so that was probably why they had that sort of timed that way. But I kind of see where you're coming from, because like you say, if you were there in that situation, you'd be thinking, right, I gotta save this for the girl and I've got to move. But I noticed that she waits until his back is completely turned, and of course then he puts he moves the lever on the machine. So I guess the scene maybe is meant to be happening only in a very few seconds, but we see it almost like, in a bit more of a slowed down version.
Wendy, she's saying in a way that Leela, because she's kind of good at fighting, she knows when it's an action like that's just going to be stupid. It's just going to get them both killed.
Yes.
Just to answer Colin B, this was a third. Okay, wait. First was Face of Evil, then there was Robots of Death, and then there was this one.
Yeah, and then after this one, it was the horror
of Fang Rock.
Yeah, because this one and horror of Fang Rock were the two she had modern garb on, well, of the time garb, and a lot of males didn't like it, so they changed it back. As old boys are just a bunch of perverts over here.
I love Fang Rock though. That is definitely one of my favorite stories ever, as well as my favorite Leela story, I think, aside from the Face of Evil, which I love as well.
Yeah. And Colin P's right. I suppose you could put it down to the fact that she wasn't aware of how the technology worked, so she didn't realise how dangerous it was. Could get away, but it's just that the fact is it seemed a wee bit slow because she went out of her way to put herself in danger to protect the other one. And then yes, they could have done it a wee bit. I mean, maybe she could have jumped him as he was pressing the lever, and the lever went on as she was fighting him. And then once she managed to get him off and down, she could have pulled the lever back and that the girl had died, but at least she had tried. It just seemed she waited till the machine was active before she jumped. Whereas doing it as he's activating the lever would have actually given it a wee bit more impetus, and it would have made the girl's sacrifice unintentional rather than, well, let us wait until he's completely distracted with that and then I'll jump him.
Retro Dickie's got a good comment.
And this was pre-2017, and we saw the strong female companion stand,
Yeah. Well, there's another thing as well. How many times did she save the Doctor in this one alone? She certainly saved him once with the guy with the axe when she killed the other Chinese assassin.
And no thanks from the Doctor.
Just sort of, he brushed it off.
Well, he didn't thank you, like reprimanded us. I told you about violence. Like, he was trying to kill you, Doctor.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But as soon as that, fair enough. And then it brushed off. And even when the police had said they found another one, and she said, we know about it. Come along. I can understand that aspect of it. It's just the fact is, gradually, the fact is she was a savage, and he referred to her as a savage. And he almost accepted that this is what happens when he has someone who's a savage. So he was more accepting of her, whereas other companions, when they went to use violence or whatever, he would be more angry. And I think that was because they were more modern companions, whereas she was more of a barbarian, a savage.
Well, do you think it's also because
it allowed it more because he understood it more?
Well, I mean, do you think to a degree also the Doctor knows that at least the 70s Doctors knew that sometimes violence was necessary. Sometimes the companion had to get their hands dirty. They have to, so there's some enemies you can't reason with. There's some situations where you can't talk your way out of it. You gotta fight. You gotta kill them before they kill you, kind of thing.
You look at the one with the Centarans and the new stuff. Who was the one that hit the Centauran? It was either with a hammer or a baseball bat.
With a hammer, Donna, yeah.
Donna with a hammer, right?
Yeah.
And I remember at the time there was a few comments about that. How, sneaking up behind him, isn't that? And I'm sitting there thinking, Leela did that already. She actually used a dagger, threw a dagger at the back of the Centauran and it actually stuck in his vent and killed him when they were on Gallifrey, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was she did that brilliant ventriloquist trick where she kind of went over here and like she covered it and she threw her voice so the Centauran turned and then she threw the knife, hit it right in the back.
But it was the fact is when it happened and Donna did it with the hammer, it was a case of, look, there's Donna killing us and Dad, and I'm sitting there thinking, Leela did that decades ago. And
see, I didn't think she killed her. I think she just stunned it.
No, basically, what Donna? Any hit to the back of it is meant to actually incapacitate it, implying that that is its only weak point. It would actually either depends how hard you hit it. So she could have hit it and knocked it out, or hit it and killed it. Depends how hard you hit it.
Colin is saying Donna with a hammer, homage to Ace attacking the Dalek with a baseball bat.
No. I met Sophie Aldred and Katie Manning at the exact same time, and I was standing in the table between both of them. And I turned to the two of them and says, "This is the first time I've been disappointed I wasn't a Dalek, and terrified and glad I wasn't a Dalek at the same time." Because you had Katie Manning doing her nude shoot with a Dalek, and you had Sophie Aldred attacking a Dalek with a baseball bat. I was both terrified and wishing I was a Dalek at the exact same time. But it's I've got a picture right there with Sophie Aldridge with a grenade launcher and a Dalek exploding in the background. Guy had actually painted it, and I bought it. And a year later, I was talking to Sophie, and I was telling her I got it. And she says, "Is that from so-and-so over there?" And I says, "Uh-huh." She says, "I thought they were really good. He gave me the original." And I says, "Well, I've got one of these prints." And she says, "You got it with you?" I says, "No, but I'm back tomorrow." So she told me to come back, and she signed it to me.
Oh, that's
because the guy had
amazing.
The guy had given her the original because he was at the next stall. And he was talking to her, and he says he'd actually painted this, and he actually gave her the actual original he created these prints from. So she was more than happy to sign any of those. So she signed mine. Peter with love, Sophie Aldridge.
Cool.
Aye, definitely.
Very nice.
Aye, so I'm over the moon with that one. But what's that? The probic vent. The problematical probic vent. Yes. But no, I don't think the Donna with the hammer. I dislike Donna so much.
Oh,
I dislike Donna, but I also dislike what's her name? The character, the actual person, the comedian,
Catherine Tate.
Dislike anything she's in. So I was already biased against her. I didn't find her funny. I'd seen so many of her comedies. I'm sitting there going, really? Is that meant to be funny?
I quite like her.
Didn't like her at all. I'd seen her some things, and she says, "Nah, I didn't know anything about Doctor Who. I was just actually saying words that I didn't know what they meant and stuff like that."
But the difference with that, though, is you might hear like another actor say that, and it will show in their performance. But what I was impressed with Catherine Tate was that it didn't come out in her performance to me. She acted the role so well that you would have thought she knew everything, about the role. And that's what impresses me a lot about
I went the opposite way, because how many years was she on it? And she's saying after all those years, she still didn't know it. So in effect, she took nothing in from her work in that series. You think about it, if they understood what TARDIS meant or what a Dalek was, because they never knew beforehand, didn't understand it, but they knew what it was because they'd been working with it and they'd been using these lines. She effectively turns around and says, "Still means nothing to me." And I thought, so in effect, she was doing a job to the point she didn't even care what she was doing, and she didn't learn anything she was doing. She just repeated words, and she didn't care, and she didn't, because you think about it, you go into a job, even if you don't like the job, you get used to the things that are around you. So even if you hate it, you still pick up things around you. She's effectively said she was in that job and she picked up nothing around her.
Yeah, I totally get that. I hear where you're coming from, and I think what I still haven't heard from Catherine, and I don't think she's ever done that, is putting it down. She was just saying that I just don't. I don't.
She's not into it. It's not an issue.
I'm not into it. But I don't think I've ever, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever heard her put it down or put fans down or anything like that.
No,
which
I don't
makes me think of another individual. So I do have to give her credit for that. But I totally hear where you're coming from.
But I mean, she did once say something like the Doctor Who was by that point after the 80s, it was the unloved relative, but I don't think that's necessarily her putting it down. She's just saying that's how it was perceived.
Exactly.
It was kind of a fact. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I had against it is she's in a work and she's effectively said she was so disinterested she just didn't pick anything up. So you imagine being in a stage play and saying that, in effect, you're effectively saying, I'm just reading words that I don't even pay attention to, and all the things around me, I'm not picking up. I'm not interested in. So it's that aspect of it. If you're in the middle of a job, you can't not pick things up. You literally go out your way to not be interested to that point. And that was the part I thought was a bit weird for considering how long she was in it. If she was only in 1 or 2 episodes, I can understand that because she's in and out and doing other jobs here and there. But she was in it as a main character.
Does that depend on the who she's under? Because, like, I mean, for instance, someone could come in. Like, I heard one actress who was in Big Finish a lot. Like, she said she did this play where she was playing a very kind of prudish character, and she said, I thought the character was boring. And then the director said to me, no, she's not boring. If you think about it, she's got strength, she's got integrity, she brings out the best, she stands her ground. Like, do you see, like, there's a lot more to the character? And I think that's, if you got a good director, a good showrunner, then that's what you have. But I do think to a degree, under New Who, it was kind of just treated as, this is just TV for the masses.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think, I wouldn't blame her for that necessarily. I think that was probably Russell's attitude.
Yeah. See, I've always said the New Who stuff is all flash and bang. Because if you take a lot of the effect...
If I may jump in...
No, you've been sitting there, just listen.
Thank you very much. So kind of you, sir. No, I was never big on theatre when I was young. My best friend, she literally had to drag me along. Literally, talking, smacking a club over my head and drag me along to go and watch theatre. Yeah. But something I noticed that they had, the show wasn't that amazing, but it was still like, okay, this has something. But is the thank you for allowing me to play this role, the gratitude the actors had to play a role, and thank you for enjoying it. That was more overwhelming to me than watching any kind of film, and that's kind of why I've loved going to theaters ever since. So literally, she had to force me to go and watch a theater, but after that, it was like, okay, these people want to be here. They're very grateful to play this role, regardless of what it is. But I can imagine automatically, if you're an actor, actress, whatever it is, and you get to play Romeo, Julia, whatever it is, and you get to play in the Shakespeare theater thingy, you get to the top of the top, and you don't thank the audience for, like, thank you for allowing me to play this very important pinnacle role that you came to see. But it's the same with any superhero movies today. And we get so many reports of people who's like, I'm not 9'10" tall, have surgically altered whatever chemistry there is.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But
I'm trying to stay clear of that one. But the last one of the big, shall we say, Marvel stuff or DC Universe stuff is Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine.
But that was another argument I'd heard as well about how it works both ways. I'm trying to remember who it was. There was a video I was watching. It was a case of getting people who looked like the characters. So they were talking about Iron Man. They were talking about Captain America. They were talking about Thor. How they got the actors that looked like the characters, and they made the characters. But there was the opposite side as well. Wolverine. In the comic book, Wolverine's 5 foot.
He is, tiny.
Whereas when Hugh Jackman was in, people went, "Oh no, that's not the Wolverine. That's not the Wolverine," and he's not even wearing yellow. That's not the Wolverine. But he made it his. and he got to the point where people actually associated that, and they would look at the comics. It was only people who knew the comics beforehand. But anybody picked up the comics thought, "Oh, that's no Wolverine," because Hugh Jackman had made it his. So it works if you've got someone who doesn't look like it, but can still act like it. That's.
But that's the first three letters, whether you're an actor or an actress or actresses, whatever that is. I'm trying to be as PC as possible on that, but ACT, act, pretend, be.
Yes.
I would agree with Retro Dicky there. I do feel like that. I didn't really warm to the Tennant here until Donna and Ten were together. That was where it felt a bit more like classic. And I do feel like, if Series 4 had been Series 1, maybe I'd kind of be a bit happier with the new series.
Yeah. See, I know. I just did not like Donna from day one, and nothing changed that right up until the end. However, I can understand it a bit better, but just because I don't like somebody doesn't mean it's bad. I'm no one of these ones that says I don't like it, so nobody's to like it. But
I'm curious about Colin's comment there. If that's true, I can't see. Do you agree?
Is Wolverine?
No, I love a lot of stuff that he's in, but I don't think he would have been able to carry Wolverine the same that Hugh did.
See, it's interesting we've been having these conversations because earlier I watched a video by Wisecrack about how theatre changed from being the because theatre now is the high class, it's people go there for more sophisticated. It's kind of seen as more higher class experience, where the cinema is the for the masses, and just the thing is, it used to be when there wasn't cinema, theatre was where all the grubby masses went, and that's why you had that tradition of the tomatoes being thrown and people laughing at all Shakespeare's innuendo, and it's just at some point that changed, and it became kind of something you had to kind of comprehend and a bit more highbrow. It's people think of Shakespeare as highbrow now, but in the day it wasn't. It was
I know. It was as you said, for the masses. It's just, see, prior to say about 10 years ago, I'd only ever saw 3 stage plays. Mm-hmm. First one was at school, and it was The Lord of the Flies. They brought people in to when we were in. It must have been 3rd or 4th year, so I was 15 or 16. That was the first time I saw a play. Apart from school plays, I'm not talking about school plays. I'm talking about proper actors and actresses coming in to do it. Was The Lord of the Flies. Second one, I got taken out from school at night to watch Macbeth. And we liked Macbeth, the play, so much they actually took us to the movie to see Macbeth with Keith Cheggers and Martin Shaw.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have believed Martin Short.
No, Martin Shaw is Banquo. And that was fantastic. So I thought I need to see more. But do you know the third one I saw? John Pertwee in Doctor Who. I saw John Pertwee on stage doing the Doctor Who, and I nearly went to Edinburgh for my 4th one when it was Colin Baker doing the Doctor Who show.
Oh yeah, The Ultimate Adventure, that one.
Yes, so I saw John Pertwee doing it, and accordingly, the next time they were doing it was in Edinburgh, and they were changing the doctors, and I just couldn't get through to Edinburgh. I was going to, just couldn't. That was before I drove, obviously, a long time before I drove.
Now, see, the Ultimate Adventure, that probably would have been more like the old populist plays, because it was almost kind of a bit of a pantomime, and that's...
It was very, and it was actually superb, because everybody was cheering when the Daleks come on, or the hiss when the Cybermen come on, and
wasn't there a bit where the Colin's recommending a Dalek, and you saw its ice sculpture drop
Yeah, I saw the Tom Baker, John Pertwee one. I didn't see the Colin Baker one. They changed it for each Doctor, just the way the lines were delivered and the things they would say. So they did customize it. So the Doctors played for a few Perth, and that was it. So it was all. That's why I wanted to go and see Colin doing it, because it was meant to be different. Similar stories, same things, but the wording of the doctors, because they customized it to that doctor. Yeah. So John Pertwee did make some. Any of the jokes he made, it was usually to his companions, his favourite companions. So the things like the Ice Warriors or.
Can I put this to you? Imagine if they did something like that now with Capaldi or Matt Smith. I mean, what would be, or even Tennant? Like that would be great. Everyone would go see that, wouldn't they?
I think they would. I think they would actually go and see it, because, especially, you can imagine they could have the joke about whatever, like the Alan Z and stuff like that, because something silly happening. Can you just imagine David Tennant going Alan Z and everybody going the laugh, and it's just that type of thing, because it would actually allow kids, adults in the audience to join in, the hisses and the boos or the cheers when the Dalek goes, that type of thing. Yeah, and it would then bring the crowd in, and I think that would actually probably work a bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Colin Pete, Martin Shaw's Macbeth. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, because I'll probably mess it up. But I think it would actually be a good... just because I remember seeing John Pertwee doing it, and how much fun I had. I even took pictures, but they were literally, because it was one of those wee click, zip, 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 zip cameras, and I was away in the distance. The pictures were literally, it was all dark except the wee bit where the stage was, so it was like that size on a page. So you couldn't really see what it was. You could just see the figures, and it was. But I still held them, because but in a move they got lost. Bummer. I was gutted.
Yeah.
Even though you couldn't see what was on the screen, I just knew that, and on that wee white bit, that was John Pertwee somewhere. Not like a zoom. You could zoom in just now and click on your phone. It's not something you could do with a wee zippy camera where you took it away and get it developed. Send it away for a week. But what was your overall, let's say, views, and any, out with all the cultural stuff, anything you would like to have seen changed in Talons? When?
Or when it's muted.
Sadako, what would you? How did you think of your overall story, and what wee bits would you have changed if you could?
I don't think there's anything I would have necessarily changed. I think it's one, if we're talking past this point, because this to me was the high watermark, and I think after this point there's stories where I say, yeah, I changed that, I'd junk that, I'd not take that companion on. But Talons, I think it's perfect. And I did a watch along, for Blue Bonnet's writer streams, we did quite a lot of the home stories. I rewatched a lot of them. This was probably my favorite one to revisit, along with the Time Warrior and Carnival of Monsters. Those three were the three I love to revisit the most.
I love I don't mean to taint you here, Sadako, but I've not seen this one, or I may have years ago, but I have no recollection of ever seeing this one. So for me, it will be a new one. And yeah, the screen behind my streaming screen still has the login for the BritBox, where when told me that, yep, this is where you can go and get it, and that is the plan for the evening. So I will probably log off fairly shortly and get my dinner and sign on, and that will be what I watch. So your description of it, and thank you to everyone. It really sounds like an amazing story to just watch and see.
It is. It's really immersive. It's the type of story, you start watching and it really does a fantastic job of putting you in that time period. And you can see, like we were saying earlier, they obviously invested a bit of money in this one, including the costuming, but all of it, it's very well done.
Do you know my
Go ahead,
favorite?
Sadako.
When you said about the immersive thing, then my favorite bit in it, one of my favorite things about the ending is like there's that big fight in the kind of the throne room where they have to incapacitate the dragon, and it's a arduous fight, and it's like it's and then like after the fight ends, like they hear the someone's like selling donuts, and it's like, oh, it's early morning, like with this dawn's coming up, and it's like you just feel like you've had that whole experience of a day and a night in this world, and I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, he's doing kind of eating donuts and walking to the TARDIS and saying goodbye. And I thought that was a lovely way to finish it.
It was. Yeah. It's one of those little charming moments. And again, it really showcased Jago and Lightfoot and how well they played off each other as well. So it was this wonderful little closing scene. And obviously, as Colin said earlier, it was like their pilot episode, you know.
and the other thing about Jago and Lightfoot is, like, on paper, like if you just look at like Jago's a bit of a little bit of a conniving car salesman type, isn't he?
Yes.
And Lightfoot is quite he's a snob, basically.
A bit of a snob and a bit very, would you say, highbrow? Basically, he definitely thought he was better than
I would say, I mean, a snob in one sense, but not an obnoxious type of a snob, because he was quite accommodating with Leela. In fact, like at that buffet table, he thought, okay, oh well, when in Rome, you know. So he just tucked in on his own to make her feel more comfortable. So he was quite a gentleman. Yeah. He was a true gentleman.
Yeah. See, I think to an extent a snob, but as you said, to the fairer sex, he was a gentleman. So I think if it was, let's say, for instance, Jamie in that role, I don't think he would have been as accommodating, because it was Leela. He was a gentleman above all else. But with Jago, he was a wee bit of initially a bit of a snob. But once he met the Doctor, he sort of realised that he wasn't the smartest cookie in the room.
No, okay. Well, what I mean though is like that's the starting point for the characters. But Holmes writing in such a way that all the heroic qualities come out as well. And so it's like they're not just stereotypes. They're not just simple. Yes. They and like it's apolitical. Like, I mean, because
he wasn't pompous. He wasn't pompous at all.
Yeah,
I think both of them had a growth,
class, but he was quite human.
See, I think both of them had a growth because they started off as the probably opposite end. First time you meet Jago, he's basically the car salesman as type. The first time you meet Lightfoot, he's the pathologist and sort of talking down to him until he realises he's in the company. And then there's a growth as he meets different people. His attitudes get softer and softer until the point where he's sitting there with Jago and Jago saying, I'm a bit of a coward, don't rely on me. And he's saying, you could just do what you can do, and if you can't, it's not an issue. So the two of them help each other grow. And it's because the only reason they got to that point is because they both of them had grown as characters from being the stereotypical up through it until they got to the point where people liked them that much, they wanted a spin-off for them. But I think you're right. The two of them started off as stereotypical, but they got to the point where they were no longer stereotypical and they became characters within their own right. Mm-hmm. And Jago was a working class impresario, and Lightfoot was a more middle class, university educated, but definitely a gentleman. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Wendy? What was your favourite part in it, and what parts, if you could, would you change?
I can't really think of anything that jumps out at me that I would change that I think, oh my God, I just cannot stand that scene at all. I think probably one of my favourite parts was Tom emptying his pockets, doing that sort of playful.
Did you see the Batmobile?
Yes, I did. Yes, I thought
Batmobile, a 67 Batmobile. Yeah,
and he was just being a bit, he was just being Tom, and he was just sort of enjoying winding up the villain, and sort of, oh, I'm sorry, what could you be looking for? Let's see what's in my pockets, and he starts emptying his pockets, and we both went, it's a Batmobile. And I had
Oh,
Holy pocket clutter.
Yes, I know that was definitely one of my favorite scenes. There's loads. I mean, there's absolutely loads. I love the scene where they're in the boat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sort of very, what's the word? It just has that wonderful, creepy,
atmosphere,
moody look to it. Yeah. That was another scene that I really liked.
Wait for me for 6 hours, or was it 2 hours? Oh, and if the tide comes in, no need waiting. As in, if the tide comes in, I'll be dead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't bother.
Yeah, I like that aspect of it. What about yourself, Darren? What did you see as your favourite, and what, if any, would you change?
I think it's a wonderful story. I remember it very well from when it was first shown back in '77, and I was 8 then. And it's one of those stories that just vividly etches itself into your memory. It's wonderfully produced. The look and feel of it, the style of the design, it plays on all that sort of not necessarily historically accurate Victorian times, but it plays on all that popular culture iconography of the Victorian era, the dark, foggy streets, the Sherlock Holmes, everything. It draws on all that, and it's wonderful, and it's a sort of thing that Doctor Who often gets knocked for being cheap this, cheap that, but when it comes to a period setting like this, the production, it's what the BBC do so well. They just make it really rich and vibrant, and it's such a wonderful story. I know it's got the issues. We'll leave that, as people said earlier.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think it was
anything in the story could change, but not the cultural stuff, because.
And it was as dark. It really sort of pushed it to the edge. It was probably as dark as classic Doctor Who ever got. If you look back at the schedules at the time. I mean, the whole series. We tend to think of Doctor Who as sort of being after Grandstand, but all these episodes went out around. None of them went out earlier than 6:30.
Yeah.
Instead of sort of 6:15 or 5:30. It's wonderful. It's one of my favorite stories. I've seen it many times. Gwen and I have just watched it again for this review, and it just stands up. It's superb.
Oh, there's two favorite moments I didn't get to mention. One is when the Doctor first confronts Magnus Greel in Lightfoot's house, and he's got the Doctor's got the disc that opens the cabinet, and he's basically using it to barter Magnus Greel for the release of Leela and take on Lightfoot. And it's like the Doctor knows how to barter. He knows he can't trust Magnus Greel, and he brilliantly. Yeah. It's easy. It's a maverick thing, and I feel like that was when the Doctor was at his smartest, and I feel like in a way that was lost over the years. But that was him at his smartest. The other is the final fight scene, like with the where they're having to duck under the Mr. Sin as he's shooting the dragon rays at the table, and it's just that little thing where it's a desperate situation and they need to get the gun. It's just the way that each action follows on from the other, and it's like with that little budget they did more with less, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that was a great scene. Yeah.
Also about the as dark as Doctor Who got. I mean, it was dark, but it was also you got to see the characters being heroic as well. And I think that's always that's the beautiful.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. They managed to be clever as well. So it wasn't just a case of intelligent. It was the way they acted was clever. The things they did, it didn't just seem to come out the blue. It seemed to be a clever, thought out way. Even when they were talking to each other about how to go around something, it was a clever, thought out thing. So they used their cleverness, each character's cleverness, cunning, to actually move the story forward. None of the characters seemed to do anything out of sorts for their character. It all seemed to be well thought through. Like, for instance, Leela running off and just jumping on the back of the carriage. Yeah, you could see it. Whereas if the Doctor was just standing there and just run off and jump to the back, you'd be sitting there thinking, really, he's not normally the one that's actually so impulsive. He can't be impulsive. If he knows he has to do something, he'll talk it through, and then once the decision's made, he'll go. However, he's not just somebody that will just jump at something without even thinking about it, whereas Leela would. And I thought that was very good. My favourite parts of it were, I suppose, the wee bits of the story, like the women on the wharf, or when Lee Sen-Chan was doing the ventriloquist part, and you could just see his jaw sort of moving as if he's trying not to actually. He's like, and he's talking, and he's trying to do the ventriloquist, and you could just see it as if he was doing it. So the fact that those wee bits were added in to give it a bit more realism, I thought were absolutely perfect. They got you more engrossed in it, because all the wee bits like, so officer, what else? Because I know you've had a drink with the family, and he goes, yes, and it basically, because they didn't need to do that to actually get the policeman to actually give a wee bit extra to the story. They could have just actually said, what else? Oh yes, and this and this and this. But it's sort of thing me that he wasn't going to bring it up because it was unimportant, but it was only because he was sort of, I got caught drinking on the job, so this is why I did it, and this is why she was a bit more upset, and it drew the story out a bit more. And that's the parts I thought was quite good. I really loved those extras to flesh out the story. If you took all the extras out and all the bits that wasn't needed for the story, you could have had a 4-parter. So you could have.
I don't think it would have worked.
I don't think it would have worked as well, but it wouldn't have affected the story as such, because they were more world building parts. That's what I'm saying. They made the story more interesting. But to move the story forward, they didn't really do anything to move the story forward. Like the talking to the policeman and that extra 5 minutes, 10 minutes of conversation with the policeman, or the 5 minutes of conversation, wasn't really needed to bring out the whole story. But it made it feel real.
Well, no, it didn't. It involved the Doctor, but involved him slowly in a way that felt plausible.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It made it feel real. It made it feel real. It wasn't just a case of exposition. It was a case of just telling a part of the story. This is why I told you this. It's not because I've been told to tell you this. So it was a case of, so why were you drinking? Oh, well, she was a bit upset because he was doing this, and he went off on this, and because his wife, and she was last seen here, and it sort of added to the story. But he could have given that as exposition. We've lost him. But I think it was the fact is those wee bits made the story more real, and it actually drew me in more because of it.
Well, I think what helps it work so very well is the structure of it. It's typical with the Tom Baker 6-part stories. It's actually split up. The first 4 episodes you could actually look are actually a separate story, and episodes 5 and 6 are the conclusion. Because you could almost say episodes 1 to 4 are a 4-part story where the villain actually wins at the end, and then 5 and 6 are sort of like an added 2-parter with the Doctor and his friends take the fight back to him and finally save the day.
Yeah.
So it doesn't drag, it
doesn't. And that's what I'm saying. All those wee bits just add to the story, and that's the parts I loved. I think that made the story a wee bit better for me. The bits I would have changed, and I think it was silly wee things again. As I said, Leela with the knife, it would have been a bit more plausible that if he was handing a knife, she didn't need to go and do all the balancing things you would see them do now, flipping it around. But she was taking the knife and sort of balanced it, checked it, and then just taking a bit of meat rather than just sort of standing there and digging it in, as if it just didn't seem right. It's just the way she handled the knife. Maybe getting her to do, right, you've done that with a knife, now try and peel a wee bit of meat off.
Yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from there. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. That's the wee bits I would have changed, and the other part would have been I would have got Leela to attack a wee bit earlier, even if the end result was the exact same, because there might have been a bit of more of a fight scene. But at least it wouldn't have made her look as if she was waiting till the woman was getting experimented on because she didn't know, and then she waited until she got the opportunity to jump in. whereas she's been seen to actually put herself in danger to protect the other one, but she seemed to hold back when the other one was put in danger. It's wee things like that I would have changed a wee bit, even if it was a case of she jumped him as he was pressing the lever and tried to go in, and he managed to push her off, and there was a struggle, and the lever got pushed, and she couldn't stop it. But at least it was shown she could do, and it would have given it a wee bit more. So, considering that, there's not a lot I would say it needed changed, apart from the obvious ones. But I meant to ask anybody: did anybody notice the homunculus part?
Yeah.
Right. Do you remember the link with Tom Baker with the homunculus? It's not the first time he's come across a homunculus.
In Tom's stories?
With Tom. Not
with
Tom's stories.
Remember
so he was in the seven... was it the seven or the...
The Sinbad one he did.
It was the Sinbad one he did. The
Golden Voyages of Sinbad.
Golden Voyages of Sinbad. Remember, it was a homunculus he actually dealt with.
Wow, I hadn't picked up on that.
It was because he effectively made his homunculi, or whatever they called them. But it was a similar idea. It was something he created. And it was the same idea. So he was fighting one that was created by Greer, and the Golden Voyage of Sinbad, he was the one that created. He was the villain in the piece, and he created the homunculus. So he did. So he built a homunculus, and then in this one, somebody built a homunculus to fight him. So he played both sides of that stone. He played the Weng-Chiang, and he also played the other side of it. So he's played both parts in these set of stories.
That's brilliant. Just jumping back in the chat a tiny bit, Colin had put not just Jago and Lightfoot, Conrad Asquith's PC Quick.
Yeah,
also returns in Big Finish.
He got promoted to Inspector.
And then further down, there's a missing adventure by David McKinty called Shadow of Weng-Chiang.
Oh,
that's intriguing.
I definitely need to dig that one out. I think I'll actually definitely look into that. And who did we just lost? Darren as well.
Darren Jim, yeah.
And then there was 3. 6 letter, 5 letter, 4 letter, 3 letter Indians. Is this an Agatha Christie play?
Yes.
Then there was 3.
Yes. Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah. Wasn't it the Sinbad movie that got Tom?
Yeah, Barry Letts. I think Barry Letts actually
had seen him in it.
And he said, I think he took who did he take to see it? But it must have been and then said, look, that's
I remember hearing that he'd actually taken somebody to see it because this is the guy we need. I think it was. Yes. I'd seen him and they wanted to. I mean, rather than dragging him in, they took him in the cinema to actually see his prelim audition. My words wouldn't work. Brain work not. Words can't he say. And what's that? Romana. During the Keys of Time storyline. What's that? What
I'm not sure what that's linking to.
Rasputin, the Sinbad movie, and then that one. Sorry, Colin P. I don't know what that's referring to. Or else is it similar idea to the audio? There's an audio one with Romana 1. Maybe that's what it is.
Oh, again,
Colin was talking about audibles. That's what it was.
No, he must mean the missing adventure, the Shadow Weng-Chiang. That must have Romana in it. Romana.
See, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah,
he's got an old book. Aye, so that makes more sense. So, the Shadow of Weng-Chiang has got Romana 1 in it.
Romana, she was another great companion, great strong female companion.
Marvelous.
2017.
They were all wonderful, and that's the thing. There was so many strong female.
But see, even the screamers were strong to an extent, because yes, they would get into trouble and it would be the scream to actually allow the doctor. But there was it's not like the early ones where effectively that's what they got brought into to be the damsel. They were still capable, shall we say. Look at Sarah Jane. She would do the screaming part, she would get herself into trouble and the doctor would get her out, but there were certain things she was still capable of doing. And that's it, just because somebody was actually a damsel in distress. Christ almighty, Jamie was a damsel in distress a lot of the time as well.
I'd say Sarah Jane is one of my favorite stories for Sarah is The Time Warrior, and there's a brilliant line in there where someone says she has the heart of a lion, sir, and that's just Sarah perfect, I think.
Yeah,
old Sarah. Yeah.
But it's a case of even if they were brought in as damsels, they still had their strengths. But then again, you also had like Jamie when Zoe and that weren't there. He was the damsel that the doctor had to save, and it wasn't because he was a Highlander. It wasn't because of anything else. It wasn't because they needed somebody to get into trouble. Usually, if you had Jamie or Zoe, it was usually Jamie getting into trouble because of he was technologically backward. So Zoe was brainier. She understood how to get around things, whereas he would be the one getting caught and things like that.
This idea, like the screaming is like a sign that they were just a damsel. I mean, like, but to a degree, like, I mean, if you're in horrifying situations, or life-threatening situations, then it makes sense you're going to have like human reactions. So I think sometimes when people say the companions they need to kind of get past this, like, well, no, that's what makes someone human. It's that they have these instinctive reactions to fear.
Yeah,
and I feel like
you had Jamie doing the same idea.
Yeah,
and it's nothing to do with being more effeminate or whatever. It was a case of somebody had to get in trouble in the story a lot of the time, or they used it was either they would have, and I suppose in the stories where they had maybe 4 companions, it's easy to understand it, because it was either Nissa or Adric it would get themselves into trouble. Tegan occasionally she was always mouthy enough to actually just bypass it and just shout it down. But it was Adric who would get himself into trouble because he didn't understand things except the magic or the mathematics, or else he would be too caught up in certain mathematical stuff that was doing. And Nissa was she was quite naive. So she would walk into things blindly because she was naive. But that could have been a male or female trait about the naivety. That I can't even think about that.
I'm just laughing at what Collins put in there.
I know, and that's why typically being Scottish, I didn't mention wearing a skirt. That's why being Scottish, I didn't mention wearing a skirt. It's a cult. It's not a skirt.
That's right, a cult.
I mean, the bad thing is, I do think that it was Robert Holmes who was specifically brilliant at writing strong female characters.
Yeah, and no wonder he ducked quickly. I've got to play this Iron Brown. I'm not afraid to use it.
Yeah. That's like Popeye and his spinach.
Aye.
Just to let you know, PJ, Darren, I moved into another room so that we wouldn't have the echo, but Darren's just popped in and he said what happened was his machine decided to do an update or something, or maybe it did one of those automatic things where you don't see it and that automatically just shuts you down.
Yeah, I've had that. I don't know how many times sitting watching something that goes boom.
I'm going to quote Tom Baker here. The problem with computers is they're highly sophisticated idiots.
Yes.
I actually use that line more and more every year. Because people say, "Oh, let's give me a computer doing this," but a computer seems to understand it more. And I think a computer is a sophisticated idiot. It'll only do exactly what you tell it to do. Oh, does it? Aye, because if you tell it to print something, it doesn't go, "I'll no print, but I'll just go and actually save it out here, and I'll do this, and I'll do it." It goes, "Right, I have to print." I can't print because of something else, but I'm not turning around going, just because you press print, I've decided not. I'm just going to go and play this game over here. Your computer doesn't do that. You tell it what to do. If you make a mistake, the printer will do what you tell it to do, mistake or not. But it's people actually tell me the computer actually seems to have a mind of its own. No, the problem is the user doesn't have a mind of their own either.
Yeah.
That's why most IT problems are picnics. Problem in computer, problem in chair, not in computer.
What did they used to call it? The 1D 10T error.
Yes.
If you write down,
yes,
if you take a piece of paper and write it down, 1D 10T error.
Yes, I call it a craft moment. Most people have a craft moment. Can't remember a fucking thing. Or it's a picnic. It's a problem in chair, not in computer.
That's a new one. I like that one.
Yeah, a picnic problem is exactly what most times it is. So yes, the people who I work with understand that I constantly talk about their craft moments or their
very good.
Welcome back, Darren.
Are a big thing.
Oh yes, got it.
Yay!
We were just talking about your picnic problem, Darren.
Yes, it wasn't the cat this time.
I know, you can't blame the cat. I think Colin Pease actually definitely want to actually start running away. He's certainly a critique of a certain Mel Gibson movie having kilts way too early and Woad way too late. They were kilts a couple hundred years too early and Woad 1,000 years too late. Yes, that's correct. The only good thing about that Mel Gibson movie was I think it got more the attitude of the Scot rather than the historical fortitude of Scotland.
We're talking about Braveheart, I take it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm. Aye.
Yeah.
It's
but
basically
captured the spirit, but
nothing else.
Not historical accuracy.
Yeah. Well, considering that the princess who married Longshanks, when William Wallace met her, which she didn't, she would have been 9 when William Wallace died. So implying that she was pregnant to William Wallace instead of the king's son. Sort of things like that. If you look at the History Buff one, the History Buff did a good review of the Mel Gibson. Basically, they start by a narration right at the very beginning and they get that wrong. They get the year wrong straight away. So they did. Basically, everything about Mel Gibson's movies are usually very inaccurate.
Which is odd. You know, surely they have either he or he would have people that would sort of research all that. So is that deliberate? It makes you wonder why.
Because, yes, they might actually turn around and say, oh, well, we'll do this because it makes it a better story. But
yeah,
things like the year, there could be a 2-3 years out. But why did they do it when it's 2-3 years out? And that's the part I don't understand. I've just got a company came through. So there.
Oh.
So
I can hear them.
You can hear them actually walking across the floor. Right. But hold on a wee sec.
Oh.
Right, sit down. And they're basically just I had to get them sat up. Don't want them to actually try and jump up me, so they can't. But yeah, the Mel Gibson stuff is just, I mean, if you look at The Patriot as well, as an American history one, that is just so bad as well.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, that is basically a lot of it seems to be he doesn't like the English. So the Americans fighting the English, the Scots fighting the English. That's where his stories come from. And the rest of it is just sort of shoved in to actually be more historically there somewhere, not accurate in any way. They're entertaining movies if you actually don't think about them being historically anything. Zulu's historical, but it is not as accurate as it paints it out, but it's a lot more accurate than anything that Mel Gibson can put out. and Zulu is the best war movie ever.
I love Zulu.
I watched Zulu when I was early teens, so I did, and it was the first movie where I didn't see, because I'd watched a lot of cowboy and Indian ones. I'd watched a lot of like Tarzan and stuff like that. So you always saw the natives as the savages or things. So you always saw the Indians just killing and scalping, or just riding around. They were just there to kill all these cavalrymen. Or you saw when like the ones in Africa, it was always the savages. They're just killing people for the sake of killing. That was the first movie where it showed both sides to be good. It'd be like watching a World War II movie, and the Germans were only there to be Nazis and to get killed off. It was that type of thing. Whereas this is the first time it showed both sides, and it showed both sides to be honourable to an extent, and it also showed both sides to be right and wrong. But it also didn't glorify war, and it didn't actually show the Zulus as just savages.
You know, that reminds me of one thing we missed in this was for me the great example of that in Talons of Weng-Chiang is when Li Sheng-Chang's dying.
Yes.
And he's talking about his being betrayed, and he talks about
his dream was to be in front of the Queen.
Yeah.
To do his magic. That's what he wanted. He didn't want to be evil. He didn't want to be this. He was just basically, he got this stuff and he had to do what the Lord said, because traditionally he was the servant. End of story.
It's basically the story gives him a dignified death rather than just a being random cannon fodder. That's what I think is quite beautiful about it.
And it didn't let him just to go and join his ancestors by walking in and getting killed. It was the fact that he actually explained what his dream was. Yeah. He didn't want to come in to do this. He just found, and he was given powers, and he wanted to use them to basically meet the Queen, to be influential, to be seen as great, but he had to use it for his master. And it was his master that corrupted him. And I thought, yes, that gave him a good ending. It definitely did. And what was the clue? I still couldn't work that out. Remember, he actually goes, "Where is he?" And he down to his shoe, and the doctors look down at his shoes. What do you mean, boot something or what? A polish? I didn't get where the click was. Remember, he was where he was. Was there a clue? Or was that just a red herring?
I need to watch it.
Because remember the bit when he leans down, when he's dying, and he leans down and he grabs his shoe, and the doctor thinks that's him trying to tell him where they are. And I lost it. I couldn't actually work out what that was meaning, because it didn't really tell you where they were.
What's the point? I didn't really pick up on that at the time.
Because remember we were talking about it wasn't a Chinese restaurant.
No.
It was a Chinese laundry.
Yes.
So it was a Chinese laundry, but him making the jokes was about a Chinese restaurant, but it was a Chinese laundry.
Interesting.
So the bit grabbing his foot didn't really make much sense when it was a laundrette, unless it was on shoe lane or something like that. But I don't know if they mentioned it, so I couldn't put the clues together.
Oh, that's interesting.
Do you know they glitched by mistake? See, when they actually where is it? It's the laundry basket. There's a newspaper in the laundry basket.
Yeah.
Did you see the headline? It's only 2 words I could see.
I can't remember.
And I'm sure it was the name of a prime minister, but I'm sure the prime minister named was it Harley? What was his name? Henley or Harley? I'm trying to remember a British prime minister in the 60s. And basically the headline was his name. So it was definitely, it was...
Wasn't Ted Heath, was it? No.
No, it wasn't Heath. I'm terrible with prime ministers, but it's just it popped up and it just sitting there thinking. Because I actually had to look up. I thought, I wonder what that reference, because it basically was there, and it actually had his name. I'm trying to think. It was the bit when he opened when it was drawn and they put it in the laundry basket outside, and there was a newspaper and it had 2 words on it. I thought that was going to be a clue, so I just basically searched the name, and it said it was a prime minister of Britain.
I can't. Yeah, I remember the newspaper, but I couldn't make out. I didn't catch what it said.
Let's see. Minister. It says Harper. Is it Harper? It wasn't Harold Macmillan, so it wasn't Harold.
He was the oh no.
No, basically I can't remember off the top of my head. I would need to actually check that screen part of it again. But it's just one of those things. I checked it online. I just did Prime Minister in the name. I'll need to check my history to see if I can find from my history of my machine where it said. But it was just one of those wee ones now. When something pops up, you just think, I wonder if that's a clue, because I could not find what the shoe part was. So I went back and actually, the second time I watched it, I saw that. I thought, I wonder if that's another clue to see if that clue made sense. And it didn't. So 2 clues it went none. So obviously you can see why I'm never going to be a police detective. It just didn't make sense to me. I'm just trying to see if there's any information about it. It's definitely not there.
Amateur sleuth.
I'm definitely no amateur sleuth. I can tell you that much. I couldn't find my way out of a wet paper bag. Although my wife used to laugh when we went to Vegas and we did the CSI tour. And she says I was sitting there with a notepad, and I mean, she was just going to it and reading all the stuff and having a laugh, and I'm filling it all in, and I solved it, thinking, there's me, I'm great, and no, really, I was absolutely rubbish. Basically, there's 4 questions, even I got one of them wrong.
Columbia Smith suggested Harold Wilson, wasn't him?
It could have been. See, I thought it was Harold Wilson there, but I can't remember. I thought the surname was Harold. It was begin with an H. I'm actually just trying to find him. I'm just checking my history of.
See, it sounded like you were going to say Dennis Healey, but he was never prime minister. In fact, he was
Chancellor.
Yeah, he blew his chance to be PM because, he was just so blunt with people. He didn't suffer fools gladly. Basically,
yeah. See, the thing is, you know what it's like. I'm going through my history on my thing to see where it was. Healy, it was Dennis Healy.
Oh, yeah.
So it was the Prime Minister. It basically mentioned Healy. Yeah. That's what it was. It mentioned Healy. And it's just as he opened the basket, it says Healy. And I think it was something else. I think it was something like Prime or something like that. But Healy was the headline. And I thought, I wonder if that's a clue. So I just put down Healy. And it came up Dennis. And he was basically the Chancellor the 90 years after it was set.
Minister for Eyebrows.
Minister for Eyebrows. There you go. Do you want a wee link? Who did Healy in Spitting Image?
Chris Berry.
Yep.
Oh, no way.
Yep. He used to do that with the big eyebrows as well. He didn't always do it as a puppet. He also used to do it in one of these stand-ups.
Wasn't The Gatherer and the Sunmakers based on Dennis Healy? The character seemed
a bit
similarities, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm. I think see the Thunderbirds. One of the Thunderbirds.
The Hood, yeah.
It was either the Thunderbirds or it was Stingray. Remember, it had the bald guy with the big eyebrows.
That's the Hood. That's from Thunderbirds. The Hood.
Thunderbirds. I'm sure that was it wasn't taking the mickey out of. I think it was a wee bit of a homage to Healy. And it was just because they had the big eyebrows, and they basically used to say that they were wanting to make him look unique. So
I never got why they gave Thunderbirds a villain. Like the villain usually in the story was a natural disaster, wasn't it?
Exactly, but
it seems strange giving the yeah.
It's that's he always seemed crazy that Mother Nature was the natural villain.
Yeah, and well,
yeah. But it's I never understood why there was a villain. Stingray and stuff like that, I could understand it, but never Thunderbirds. I just have to send out both of my Thunderbirds to find out. I got another. I told you I got one. So I've got my Thunderbird 2 there and there, exact same ones. Thanks to my nephews. I need to get Thunderbird 4, the wee yellow one. That's the only one I'm missing. Well, Thunderbird 5, but that doesn't really count unless I hang it from my ceiling. What's the chances of that? I want Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, Thunderbird 5. And what's the one from UFO? Is it Sam? Can you remember what the name of the one from UFO is? I think it's called.
I don't know that one.
It basically looked like almost like a parrot. So it did. S.A.M satellite something monitor. There you go. It had to. If it hadn't been for the hood, international rescue wouldn't have been needed to be armed.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. They were international rescue. They shouldn't have needed to be armed. Right, come on. Who's Space? Sid. It was Sid. Space Intruder Detector. That's what it was. It wasn't Sam. So it was an acronym, a 3-letter acronym, and I got it wrong by 2/3. So Sid, I want a Sid. It basically looks almost like a parrot, a mechanical parrot. So it's just more boxy, but that's what it looked like. If you see a picture of Sid, it looks almost like a wee square parrot. I'm going to actually see if I can find one, because that is something I definitely want. Can't even spell Sid, 3 letters. How's that? See if I can find the image of it. There, it's there. I'll show you the image of it. All right. This is Sid from. Share. That's Sid there.
Oh yeah.
See, it looks almost like it's almost like a wee parrot type with the way it's done with the eye.
Yeah, that's interesting shape.
Yeah, so I want one. I want him actually on my roof. I want Deep Space Nine. I want Babylon 5, and I want Thunderbirds 5. So anytime I get a space station, it's got on my roof. There's no many other space stations out there that I can think of. Anybody think of a spaceships? I would like to get big enough that I could go on my roof, but space station has to go.
Liberator?
It's not a space station.
Oh, sorry, I missed it.
I says I would like to get big enough spaceship to go on my roof, but I would like space station. But the problem is, it's just.
What about Deep Space Nine?
That's what I said. DS9. I've got a thing called retro vehicles. Here it's here. I've got my retro vehicles. As I said, I catalogue everything. So bikes, cars, helicopters, planes, space. So I've got UFO Interceptor, UFO Liberator, Serenity. Got Babylon 5 stuff to get. It's not so. Stingray voice to bottom the sea, so it has to be under this one. There's stuff missing from this because DS9 I've got. Why is half of my list actually not there? Because my space stations isn't there. Yet I have them listed. See, I've got bikes I need to get as well. I need to get Street Hawk and Chips because I've got a land speeder from Star Wars. I need to get
I've got the Chips theme in my head now.
See, I need to get a Necto 1 General Lee kit, the A-Team, the Mystery Machine, Lady Penelope's Rolls Royce, Back to the Future, and Captain Scarlet's car, although I nearly picked that up, but it was a wee bit bashed. Space Island 1. What is Space Island 1? What's that from? That sounds like a right old classic sci-fi. Space Island 1.
That's familiar.
But see, even I need to get the Voyager, the Deep Quest ZSV, stuff like that. The Silent Running one. Remember the big ship from Silent Running? The one with Huey, Dewey, and Louie on it.
I'm trying to remember.
It's been so many years.
I can't remember what it looks like. It's been so long.
It's just the long one with the 3 domed at the end of it.
Now the thing is, in the new Battlestar Galactica, in the pilot, there was a craft like that, wasn't there, with the dome and the garden? Do you remember?
I sort of remember it because they did a similar one in Babylon 5. They had the dome part where the garden is. 1970s BBC series starring Judy Lowe. I don't know. I definitely haven't seen that one. And I want a Space 1999. So I'll need to just put the moon up. That's it. But I want Alpha 1, Moon Base Alpha.
Oh yeah.
I definitely want that. I've seen the model of that, and it is superb because you can buy the Eagles that size to sit in it. So the model is sort of enormous, but it's probably as big as my desk, so you can have all your small Eagles sitting in it. So it's to scale for that. So the desk size. So you're talking about, I think it's something like 6 feet square. The model. No space for that, unfortunately. I would need to actually make sure it's all glued together and hanging up on the wall sideways. Or else I could put it on the roof upside down, because after all, it's on the moon. It would actually look fine either way. But if I spray paint my roof grey, it will look like the moon. I could just start gluing things. And obviously I wouldn't get shot. Yeah. Silent Running, definitely. There's a space station from 2001.
That's the Odyssey, isn't it?
It is the Odyssey, yeah.
No, it's Discovery.
Is it Discovery? I thought, what one's the Odyssey then? Where did the Odyssey come from?
Oh, no. It's from the title, Space Odyssey. It must be. I think the craft was called Discovery. The Discovery.
Aye, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I suppose that's where we're getting it mixed up. But which Spectrum? It has to be the originals. I don't like the remix. Although Captain Scarlet, they did a remake before. They're talking about doing a remake again. The first remake was animation, and it actually was not too bad.
I saw bits of it. It was quite good.
Yeah, they basically they kept Captain Scarlet, Captain White, Captain Black, and all that, and they didn't change it up too much, so they did. But it was still actually quite good.
Yeah, it was Discovery 1. That was the craft from 2001. Discovery 1. But there was a space station in it though. There was that circular one that you hear kind of Strauss playing in the background when you got that long docking sequence. The double wheel, the double wheel.
That's right. It reminded me of a silent battle cruiser from the original Battlestar.
Yeah,
it's basically the silent battle cruiser, almost like with 2 wheels coming out of the center, rather than the Battlestars that they had in the new one.
I've just remembered there was a space station in one of the early episodes of Blake 7. One of the Serverland's base, I think. It was the
but there was also a space
spinning
station.
wheel type space station.
Yeah, but there was also one that Avon was going to stay on, remember? Until it actually got blown up by the ships. They got attacked just as they were leaving by 2 ships, and as they moved out the way, the missile went through and destroyed the other space station. So there was a few space stations in Blake 7, which I need to I want to rewatch that as well. I want to rewatch that. I want to rewatch Babylon 5. I want to rewatch Farscape. I want to rewatch everything.
There's the Nerva beacon from Doctor Who as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But there's so much from right across the board I just want to get, but it's retro vehicles I'm definitely looking for. And I've got, I would say, less than half of my collection is the ones that I remember. So I've still got a few to go.
Well, I mean, feel free to post suggestions on my forum. Because, like, we need, I think we kind of, I think the way forums are, we kind of need a bit more, like, visual stuff. Like, we need kind of, like, because...
Well, that's what I want to do, because occasionally... Do you know what I was actually going to do? Believe it or not, I was going to steal Cockney Spock's idea on how he does his dioramas with his troops.
Yes.
I like that idea. I don't have the stuff nowadays to do it with. I used to do it at one point. I could have actually put large Warhammer armies out, and I had boards and I had scenery I used to do. Years gone by, bye. However, I was going to do that, just pick up a couple of models and just basically talk about where I got them and stuff like that, and just have the model on and just discuss them. So, like, for instance, my Pat one, I was going to bring that out, where I got it, that type of thing, and just basically and just do a minute and a half, just one every day, just a minute talking about specific models, just going through my collection and saying what I want to get for it, or what, like, for instance, Space 1999 Eagle, what I want to do with it, what I want to get for it and stuff like that, just to talk. And if I do get stuff, and then just do that. But that might be something after I retire. I'm a long time ago away. When I was a lad, I had this week. My beard will be down to here, and it'll be all white.
You'd be like Gandalf.
Gandalf the old. I'll be
just like don't be like Sauron.
I'll be like my father. So well, I did a face aging software, and I sent the picture to my sister, and
that is terrifying.
And she says, just before my dad passed, my dad never had a beard. They didn't like a beard, so he had a tash. So apart from his tash being white, it just basically, even my beard, it basically changed my beard as well to be completely white and longer. But from there up, it was my dad's face. Very freaky that I'm going to look like my dad when I'm older.
Wow.
And I'm not talking about similar to my dad. It was as if somebody actually says, right, we'll just put a beard on that face and say that's you, because it was my dad's face, and it was freaky. And that basically goes, wow, that is just too freaky. So
it is really trippy.
I said to my sister, and she says, what did you put a beard on him for? That's meant to be me. She actually thought I'd edited one of these pictures.
Wow.
Freaky.
That is freaky, yeah.
So I'm going to look like my dad. I'm okay with that, because according to my mum, my dad was a handsome man. Obviously, she was blind and had no taste, because she used to say I was gorgeous. But there again, mother for you. That's mother for you. But then again, my mommy was right.
They always say with technology, digital technology, the more convincing it is, the more unnerving it is.
Well, that is it.
Yeah.
Colin P has several Airfix Eagles. I can't build Airfix anymore. No movement in my hand. I'm jealous. I watched B5 stream on Monday and another on Friday. Is that it's no clobbering? Who's doing it? Because I know Alpha Omega is doing Faulty Towers at the moment. and there's somebody doing the Babylon 5. Unfortunately,
is it possibly Noel? No, it's not Noel, is it? He's doing Sliders, isn't he?
Dan. Noel was doing Sliders. Is it Dan that's doing the Babylon 5?
Might be. Because
the Sliders as well. I love Sliders. The first few seasons, the final ones with the Cro-Mags weren't my favourite, but I still love Sliders. And to me, it was like Time Tunnel, Doctor Who. They all had the exact same premise. You know why the Doctor's got the TARDIS, don't you?
British?
No. You literally know why the Doctor has a TARDIS. It's the same idea as Sliders, which copied it later on, and it was the same idea as Time Tunnel. They wanted something that they could make a different story each week or each series, a different story each. Change the story, so they didn't always have to have it in a space station. They didn't always have to have it in a spaceship, whatever.
Right.
It's something. It was a MacGuffin to get them from A to B without any worry. So what's the quickest way to actually change your scene is get something that can get you from A to B quickly. The TARDIS. So a police box, a box that they could just build. That's what you walk out of into your Roman or space station or cowboy and that's literally what it was for. They wanted a box in a police box. They thought everybody recognised them. They're all over the country. They didn't know that the police had actually just started changing over to radios in their car, and the police box was going to be phased out. They thought
they still had to fight for that, though, didn't they?
Yes, but that's what it was. They needed a MacGuffin to get them from story to story. So that's the
Retro Dicky, backing up a little bit in the conversation, he put in, it must be Fat Steven Seagal is doing the stream you were referring to, and then Colin's got something else underneath.
See, I didn't know that. I've watched a couple of his streams, but I didn't know he had Patricia on it.
There's so much to watch. There's so much to watch. We need multiple universes to be able to sort of
watch all these things. I'll need to do is shut that door and actually go back in time and just rewatch them all.
Yeah, there you go. Nice door.
I mean, that's the thing about Talons is like you watch it like it recreates the period of the Victorian. You want to kind of. Last time I watched it, I wanted to stay there. I didn't want to come back to the 21st century. I just thought, I'd rather stay in Victorian England. It just seemed like.
See, my wife said that she would have loved to live in. Because she likes baking and cooking. She likes she hates just an electric oven and stuff like that. She likes gas and she likes that, and she would love to have actually lived at a time where these things were commonplace. You couldn't actually do that, so she could do the baking the way she would like to do it, rather than we've got an electric oven and we'd have to change everything about the kitchen just to replace it because we've not got gas coming in and stuff like that. It's that idea. She would like to have one where she could actually just put the coal in, prepare it, get it done properly. It's just one of those things, and the more formal dress and stuff like that. Yeah, I would look good in a tux. I need to go that far back. I wear a wig. Powder. Yeah.
So I wonder if Mr. Ben was a Time Lord.
Actually, I think he was. I definitely think he was. And basically, I don't know if it was Mr. Ben, it was the Time Lord, or it was the shopkeeper. It was the Time Lord. So he would come in, try it up, and while he was trying it on, Mr. Ben.
As if by magic, the shop.
Yes, as if by magic. Basically, the shop had moved by the magic of the shopkeeper.
But Mr. Ben would always go through the magic door that led to an adventure. So was that a TARDIS? Or a time portal of some sort?
Yeah, I always put it down as yes, it was a TARDIS. I must admit, I always thought the shopkeeper was the Time Lord. So he would come in, go through and go out the other door, which the shopkeeper had teleported. So it was a trans-dimensional door. Because although he came in one door and went out another, doesn't mean there's not two doors in the TARDIS. So he comes in one door, changes, and then he goes out another door. See, but then again, Terry Pratchett had a shop front. It would change. It was just one of those old shops that nobody ever noticed until you went in, and then when you went back to the stuff, it disappeared because you could never find it again. So he says every town's got one of those shops that you can never find when you're trying to take stuff back, and you get all weird and wonderful stuff in it. And I know that the one in Rossi. It used to be I think it was a butcher's. My mum told me about it. She was down in Rossi with my dad and relatives, and she'd gone to buy some stuff. And when she was standing there, she said to the guy, "Is it okay?" She picked up a cooked chicken, and so she said to the guy, "Is it okay if I start eating that, and I'll pay for it when I get there?" He says, "Any problem." So she's sitting eating it while she was waiting. There's about 5 people in front of her, so she was eating it, and she got to the front, she went like that in her handbag, no purse, and she all mortified. And the guy says, "Listen, just come back with the money." And she got my dad, and she was mortified, and went back and couldn't find the shop. They hunted for about an hour and couldn't find the shop. And they never went back to Rosie after that.
Mysterious shop.
The mysterious shop had disappeared, and they reckoned it was only there to embarrass my mother.
A mysterious shop. I shall write that down.
Yeah. Could you imagine actually that shopkeeper? "Excuse me, it's okay." "No, the last time we had a woman in here, she stood and ate that, and then she bugged off and never came back."
There was a shop in a nearby town just up the road here called town called Pontypool. There was a shop there for many years that was legendary for looking like Steptoe's junkyard inside, and whatever anyone went in for, this almost strange old man used to run it. It was always there. You would always find exactly what they want, no matter how obscure, whatever. He had it in there somewhere. It was one of those places.
Lop Sang from Terry Pratchett's shop. Basically, Lop Sang is the time monk, and basically he ran the Sonky shop in Ankh-Morpork, and basically it was the same idea. Whatever you wanted, he would find it for you in his shop.
Yeah, that was it.
They called it a Sonky shop in Terry Pratchett's world. There you go. So was the changing room a TARDIS, and was the shopkeeper the master? Was MC? Beats had people in times of dimension 90% of the time, so he could study with. Yeah, Heinlein did a lot of that. His stuff was I loved the Heinlein stuff. A lot of the movies that they made for Heinlein stuff didn't work as well for me. I prefer the books. They were far better, although they were of their time, a lot of them. So they were. Right. Well, that's the one I was trying to think of. Did we mention it? I don't know. So, Talons of Weng-Chiang. We did talk about it initially.
Yes.
So, 100 subscribers. Thank you, ladies and gents, for subscribing. Thank you to my gracious hosts who helped me get to the 100. And if you want to be in with a chance of winning the 2 DVD special, well, it's not a special, it's special because it comes from me. That is it. Because my
it's just special. Yeah.
It's special, just like me. My mommy said I was special. She had me tested. And so if you want to be in for a chance to win this, make sure you're subscribed and comment in the comments. And it's a bit silly, comment in the comments with the hashtag Talons. And 10th of September is when I'll be drawing it out. And the winner will be contacted, and I will post this out to you.
Right, guys, don't miss this because, like, I've got a copy of Talons and I'm giving it to no one. So, PJ's being generous.
I'm being generous because 100, and when I get to 250, it's going to be a Judge Dredd 2000 AD thing.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to do that for each of my targets. And it took me a year. It took me over a year to get to 100. So God knows what age I'll be when I get to 250. Well, how much more grey, shall we say? If it all goes grey, then you realise I'm still at 140. Give me, come on.
Perhaps you'd have regenerated by then.
Yeah.
Yay.
Regenerated into a handsome bugger. Yeah. But there you go. A master story without the master. Talons of Weng-Chiang.
Yes.
That's what it
Wonderful
is.
story. Wonderful story.
He mentions generation in it, and he has a time machine. So they took bits out, left bits in, but you can see the master in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Colin P says, yes, we all know that's PJ made. Thank you very much. My mommy told me that.
And hopefully Jim is enjoying his viewing of it this evening.
Yes. I think I hope his machine didn't crash again. He's had problems with his machine crashing.
This seems to be a trend this week. It's just been a weird week.
Yeah, it has
for
been.
IT.
I can't even deny it because I was on the captains and my whole internet went down. So, so I basically just doink out, and I had just to text them on my phone saying "hang me." So I shall take a jelly baby.
Now I want a jelly baby.
Yes,
I've got a whole bag of them. Look.
Oh, we got to get some.
I know.
They're millions. Not as nice as the normal jelly babies, but
I'd have to get it on the shelf in the morning.
Yes.
That's what I'm going to do.
It's got to be in a paper bag.
Yes, got to be in a paper bag to be proper jelly babies. I bet he's got them. I bet he's got them. Yeah, I knew it.
The other day, I was
wrong drawer, but I have got a whole pack of packets of paper for my jelly babies because I needed them for my cosplay, and I have. So for my cosplays, Tom, I basically had a packet. I had 2 packs, one in each pocket, because throughout the day I would do that, and people would have, and I would have one or go. Oh,
you start running out.
So I used to actually have a couple of bags in my pocket so I could actually keep refilling the packet to do it. So, but thank you very much, ladies and gents, for watching. And I must admit, although I loved this much, I want to do more of classic Doctor Who discussion.
Yes.
A lot of guys do
Absolutely.
reviews of them. A lot of guys do watch-alongs. The problem with the Tom ones, you imagine starting these at 8 o'clock and it's a 6 episode. That's 3 hours just doing it. I would rather 3 hours talking about it, what we liked, what bits in it. So even just jump from bits of the story backwards and forwards. I think the next one, it has to be my favourite one of all Doctor Who classics. War Games.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
War Games. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's fucking fantastic. But considering Tom is my favourite Doctor, John is my first Doctor, but Pat's story is my favourite of all time. It's the one I go to. If I'm feeling a bit down, it's always War Games first. Then all the other ones can follow after that. But War Games always cheers me up. And I don't know why it cheers me up, considering it's all about war. But maybe I'm a sarcastic.
It's a comfort. Yeah, it's a comfort watch. It's something that you obviously you just enjoy watching, and it just brings you that puts you in the right zone.
Exactly.
I like seeing Jamie, the cat priest, a lot. Definitely.
Yeah.
The first introduction of the Time Lords. Although not the first Time Lord we met, but the first introduction of the Time Lord Society.
Yes.
Because you remember you met the Mad Monk.
And Susan.
Well, Susan, yes, technically she was a Time Lord as well. But she was never referred to as that. But the Mad Monk was, and then you had the Celestial Toymaker.
Is he? Whoa! I see now.
Not, but they sort of implied he was.
I see in the Nightmare Fair they do give an explanation about where he's actually from, and it's quite an interesting one. Like
Oh, there you go. That's a good idea. Colin, drop me a line with a link just so I make sure I'm subscribed, because I like the idea of that. Just started doing a similar thing myself. Fantasy story ideas. I love that, talking about culture shows and storytelling. That sounds ideal to sit and watch, doesn't it?
Yeah.
See, I found that like this weekend was a bit different. I watched Gary Neurotic. I watched a couple of his stuff. It was on, but I'm finding myself. I'm actually watching less of the big channels and watching more of the smaller channels, because I think we get better stuff from the guys with like myself, the ones just under 1,000 subscribers, because apart from anything else, they've got a lot better things to say. Whereas, yes, the big channels seem to have the followers because they're talking current pop culture, whereas I would rather watch ones that are classic pop culture, and there's very few of them talk that.
We've got sorry, Sadako. I've just happened to notice in the chat we have a new commenter, Jean Giovanni Chronicles. Says thank you for a great conversation.
Thank you, Jean Giovanni Chronicles. Thank you for joining us. And hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And Retro Dicky. Yeah.
Look what MC says. He hasn't seen Tom Baker, Doctor Who, since he was a young kid, so he couldn't join in much tonight. But we'll do more Tom stuff.
If it helps people reconnect, with classic Who, I think that's a wonderful thing. And once you go back and you reconnect with it, whatever your era, whatever, you can jump in anywhere you choose. It's just so wonderful to go back and re-experience it, especially if you haven't watched it in a long time.
Speaking of which, there is my forum. Shall we?
Yay!
The description of the forum is in the.
Oh, is it?
Yes, okay. I put that in by default. I put Darren's one in as well, and Matt's link. Any of the guys that are actually come onto my channel, it's on every single one of my videos. I add the links to you guys.
Thank you, PJ.
So, definitely, because you just helped me get here, so I'm putting a link to all your channels in, because the forum is fun, and I will start posting more, because I definitely want to actually maybe take a wee picture here and there, because you do not only Doctor Who, you do Red Dwarf, you've got Star Trek, the classic series as well.
I've also got a private storytelling writing forum, and I know Colin mentioned that he had ideas about cult shows and storytelling.
There you go.
Cool.
Me, I can't even write my CV. I have to get people to help me with that, and I know everything that I've done. I'm terrible. That's the one thing in uni I used to always fail at, was storytelling. Maths I could do, because it was literally a case of A followed B followed C, but as soon as you had to make up stuff, I can talk rubbish if you want, but I can't write it down and actually make it sound sensible. I was always terrible at storytelling.
The thing is, like, you start bad, but you get better if you practice the craft.
No. I'm the opposite. I start bad and get worse. That's how bad I am. It's the same as my family's all musical. My brother, my 3 sisters, my dad, my mum, all either singers or they can play musician. I can't even play a triangle, and I grew up with them all playing music or singing. I can't sing. I can't hold a tune. I can't even play a triangle without actually making it sound out of tune. So I know I can start bad and get worse. I started bad when I was young, and I got worse as I got older. How bad is that? That's how bad I am at music, and that's basically I grew up with it. That's why I don't listen to music anymore, because I listen to music and think, oh my God. That's why I don't do karaoke. I don't want to actually enter the pub.
Oh, yeah. I'm not a fan of karaoke myself, but...
No.
I can't. It's just because I know I can't carry a tune. I could carry water better than I could carry a tune, and I'm talking about water just in my hands. Yeah.
Right then.
Okay. But ladies and gents, thanks again. And Wendology, Darren Who, and Sadaki24, thank you very much for being such gracious co-hosts. And what I'm going to do, if I can remember how this works, I'm going to try my outro.
Cool.
Lovely.
Right. Okay.
I'll catch you guys.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
I'm not old. I'm classic. PJ may be out.